Hello, everyone. Today's date is May 28, 2023. We have a simulation with Professor Shlomo Sand. We are the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. My name is Joseph Avasar. I believe that a common government is necessary. The Israeli government, the Palestinian government, and the Hamas government are not legitimate government for the area of Israel-Palestine. They're not elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. They control people in Israel-Palestine, but they control people that have not elected them. Therefore, they are dangerous governments who have not been able to give peace to the people of Israel and Palestine. We believe in the creation of a common government for the people in Gaza, the West Bank, Israel, and Jerusalem, from the river to the sea, Palestine, Israel. A government that would be the only legitimate government in the area because, like I said earlier, the government of Israel, the Palestinian government, and Hamas government are not legitimate government in that area because they are not elected by the people of Israel and Palestine. We believe in a common government that would be a democracy based on a separation of power between the legislative, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. A government that would be without religion, that would be secular government, with equality for the people of Israel and Palestine. You can send me an email to josephavassar@gmail.com. And you can also read our Constitution at ipconfederation.org. The Constitution is in 3 languages, Arabic, Hebrew, and English. And it explains how the common government will be created and how it will function in conjunction with the Israeli and the Palestinian existing government. We are not proposing the dismantling of the Israeli or the Palestinian government. We are proposing a separate and independent government that will exist simultaneously with the Israeli and Palestinian government. Whenever is necessary, it will work on its own without seeking authority from the existing government. However, sometimes it will have to work with the existing government simply because they are existing and they are powerful, and it is not possible to dismantle those governments. You can also read the frequently asked questions that explain the essence of the common government in a more question and answer format. Today we have Professor Shlomo Sand. I was told that in Europe and in Israel, he's known as Shlomo Sand. In America, he's known as Shlomo Sand. Shlomo Sand is an Israeli emeritus professor of contemporary history at Tel Aviv University and the author of The Invention of the Jewish People. His book has significant importance in the context of Israeli-Palestinian peace, since it deals directly with the question of Israel as a Jewish state, and it is causing controversy among Israelis because it questions the basis for the Israeli state. The thesis of the book is that Judaism is a religion and that Jews are not a people in an ethnic, national, or biological sense. He recently published in Hebrew his new book, Israel-Palestine, The Question of Binationalism, which also deals with the politicization of religion on both sides. You can see the cover of that book. It's in Hebrew, and it says Shlomo Sand, Israel, Palestine, V'Shelat Hadu-Lumiyut. That's his book in Hebrew. It will be translated into English and French in the near future. His book, The Invention of the Jewish People, has been translated into many, many, many languages around the world, and it is causing huge controversy all over the world about the essence of what is written in that book. So he's our guest today. On June 11, I will be on vacation, so we will not have a simulation. On June 25th, we will have Yoram Perry. He's a former political advisor to the late Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and a former editor-in-chief of the Israeli Daily Davar. Daily Davar was a very important paper similar to Haaretz. And just as an interest, my father used to read that when I was a kid. I used to read that paper as well. That should be a very interesting conversation. On July 9, 2023, I will have a debate with Yoram Sheftel, who is a lawyer in Israel. He's a very controversial person. He's a Netanyahu supporter, very right-wing, and very well-known and liked by the right-wing in Israel. The question that will be debated is about Zionism. Is Zionism good for Israel? Sheftel believes that it is. I believe that it is not good for Israel, and I don't believe that it's good for the Jewish people in general. It should be a very interesting debate. On July 23rd, we will have a debate between the IPC, the Israeli Palestinian Confederation, and a Land for All, a debate about what is the best vision for Israel-Palestine. They have a vision that they call confederation. We have a vision that we call confederation. We think that our vision is better than theirs, but we will debate that issue on July 23rd. We had many, many participants in the simulations. We had Gideon Levy, we had Lawrence Wilkerson, we had Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky came to our simulation twice, and after participating in 2 simulations, he endorsed our formula for peace. As far as I know, our formula for peace was the only formula for peace that Professor Chomsky ever endorsed. I may be wrong, but I think that I am correct on that. So we're very proud of the endorsement that Noam Chomsky gave us. And this was after 2 simulations in which we made some changes. And after the changes, Professor Chomsky endorsed our formula for peace. We are trying to get a lot of people to participate. We're sending a lot of emails, a lot of letters, physical letters to people all over the world. We sent hundreds of them. And unfortunately, people are not ignoring us and or not participating. Question is why? In my opinion, a lot of people are afraid of a solution. It's very easy to criticize, but it's a completely different thing to promote a plan and to support and endorse a plan. And that's why I'm so appreciative of Professor Chomsky. He criticized us and then he endorsed us once we made the changes that I thought were very, very good changes that he asked us to do. We will have a simulation today for 120 minutes. The simulation includes several segments. Each segment is about 5 to 7 minutes. After each segment, we will ask Professor Sand to respond and to what he has seen. We will also then have a conversation with Professor Sand. Professor Sand talks about the question of identity and Judaism. This simulation is not necessarily about that, but he is very articulate on that subject. And then we will have plenty of time to discuss the question of identity, Judaism, and question and answers by the audience. And Professor Sand will respond to the questions and will give his own presentation. And then we will have concluding remarks. We have a video that explains our vision for peace. I would like to play it for you. It's 2 minutes long.
The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has endured for generations. And instead of time healing the wounds, it's only caused the anger to fester and the violence to grow. But what if there was a way to alleviate the tension? Something that may not outright solve every problem, but at least create a forum that encourages a peaceful compromise. Welcome to the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, a common third government between the Israeli and Palestinian citizens, specifically designed to foster peace, tolerance, and economic prosperity between the two nations. Here's how it works. First off, both Israel and Palestine will keep their respective governments. Israel's Knesset and the Palestinian National Authority will remain unchanged. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, IPC, will be a third entity acting as a unifying agent between the two. The IPC will comprise 300 parliament members elected from 300 districts in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Above them will preside a president and vice president, one Israeli and one Palestinian. In order for the IPC to pass a law, it will require a 55% majority from its Israeli representatives, as well as a 55% majority from its Palestinian representatives, thereby preventing either side from monopolizing the legislature. Of course, the IPC won't undermine the political power of either the Israeli or the Palestinian government. At any time, Israel or Palestine may veto a law passed by the IPC. If neither side vetoes, the law is passed. And the two nations are another step closer to resolution. Please help us make this a reality. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. We might speak different languages, but we all mean the same thing.
So we are simulating how this common government for the people of Israel and Palestine will work, why it will be legitimate, and what kind of legislation it can vote. It can pass. Before we actually have the simulation, I would like to conduct a pre-simulation survey. I will ask you at this time to vote whether or not you support the creation of a common government for the people of Israel and Palestine to make peace. Please vote at this time, and then we will have another survey at the end of the simulation, and we will see if we are able to reach different results. Okay, give it 2 more seconds for people to vote. All right. At this time, we have, you can see people are still voting. Excellent, please vote. All right. So at this time, we have 45 out of 50 vote yes, which is 90%, and 5 out of 50 voted no, which is 10%. 10% no, and 90% yes. A lot of the people that are voting now have participated in applications, so I am not surprised that we see this high number of voting yes. It doesn't mean that in reality it will be the exact same thing. Have the objective to show how a common government will make peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis, but not only between the Palestinians and the Israelis, but also between the neighbors, such as Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Hezbollah, and every country that is not in peace with Israel, Palestine. We are not anti-Israeli, we are not anti-Palestinians, we are pro-peace. Professor Sand is not a representative of the IPC. He was invited to test to tell us what does he see wrong with creating a common government, or what does he see right? Hopefully he'll say that I met with him about a week ago, and hopefully he will accept the idea of a common government. We are pro-peace, and we have our own narrative, our own formula for peace. We do not follow the Israeli formula or the Palestinian formula. We are following an objective, what we believe is objective, a bird's-eye view of the whole area. First discussion, I told that to Shlomo Sand. We're not, I'm not the most polite person in the world. We will have a rigorous discussion, and but hopefully it will be very respectable. Like I said, we are not claiming that we are the exclusive formula, but we think our formula is the best. I will ask Professor Sand to judge our plan based on these criteria. Could our plan, is our formula for peace, could it make peace? That's the first question. The second question, is it implementable? Can we make this a reality? Could we make a common government for the people of Israel and Palestine in the whole area from the river to the sea, a reality? And if we fail, is there a downside to the Israeli or the Palestinian government if we fail? But I will ask Professor Sand to be fair, to judge us not based on perfection. Like you see, perfection is limiting. It's the enemy of good. We cannot be perfect. But I will ask Professor Sand to judge us based on the alternative. What do we have as an alternative that is better than what we are offering? I will ask Professor Sand to be fair on that in that respect. We are demonstrating how a common government could work by showing legislation that will be acceptable to both sides, that both sides will not be able to reject because they will lose political legitimacy if they object. We cannot show you all the legislations that the common government could pass because we're limited by time. So we're showing you very little. But in each simulation, we show different legislation. We ask you to look at the big picture. And this is not the time to start arguing about technical issues. This is a simulation. This is not a lecture. So I ask you to refrain from comments. But I encourage you to ask questions. There is a difference between a question and a comment. This is a simulation. We are mimicking the operation of an existing or proposed system. This is not a lecture. So if I show you a picture of an airplane and you say, Joseph, how does this thing fly? That's a question. Please ask question. But if you say, Joseph, airplanes cause pollutions, I don't like airplanes, that's a comment. Keep your comments to the end or write them in the comment section of the Zoom platform. But keep your comments to the end because they just tend to kidnap the conversation into another conversation. We are trying to demonstrate how the common government will work. And we're not here to argue whether it's a good idea or not. We just want to show you that it could work. And then at the end, you can make your comments. In order for the simulation to work, we need you to make assumptions. Just like, anything else that we do scientifically, we have to make assumptions. So these are the assumptions that I'm asking you to make for the purpose of the simulation. The first assumption is that we had an online election that lasted 3 months. What does it mean? That we allow people the 14 million people in Gaza, the West Bank, Gaza, Jerusalem and Israel to vote in the last 3 months. Not one day of election, but 3 months of election. You can vote by using your phone, you can use your computer, you can use your library, you can use your friend's computer or your friend's phone to vote. I also want you to assume that 5 million people voted. That I want you to assume that 3 million people voted, 3 million Palestinians voted, and 2 million Israeli voted. This is the assumptions that I want you to make in order to make this this event, this simulation, a success. I want you to assume that 1.5 million people voted for president, okay? I want you to assume that me, Joseph, I was elected as president. Why? Because it makes it easier for me to conduct the simulation. From now on, I'm going to pretend for the purpose of the simulation that I am the president. And I want you to assume that, so that you know I do not intend to be the president. I don't ever intend to run. I'm not even qualified under the Constitution to run, but it makes it easier for me to demonstrate that in the simulation. I also want you to assume that 300 parliament members were elected, that we have 300 districts and 300 parliament members elected, some Palestinians, some Israelis. Each parliament member represents 47,000 people. He or she does not represent the Palestinian people or the Israeli people. He or she represents their district of 47,000 people, and he or she, as a parliament member, has the duty to do what's right for their district, not for the Palestinian people or the Israeli people. I am the president. I do what's right for everyone, for the whole 14 million people, because I'm elected by 5 million people, and I am the legitimate president from now on. During the simulation, I am the legitimate president of the whole area. This is what I want you to assume. Professor Sand, do you have any difficulty, and all of you, please voice, do you have any difficulty accepting those assumptions at this time?
No, it's okay for me.
Okay.
There is here and there. Yeah, okay.
Any reservations? Do you think that it's not possible to have an election? Do you think it would not be, that it's not possible to elect 300 parliament members?
No, the problem is not technical for me. I'm more concentrate, not of representation, but of right. You know, I don't start with the representation in my view of the conflict of the situation. My approach is much more closer to which kind of right people will have in this common federation or confederation.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah, I think I do. I think that, does anybody else have any questions or comments regarding those assumptions? Please speak up.
Just to very quickly, I think the idea is equal rights. And this is where we start. That's the assumption too, that it will be equal rights for everybody, Palestinians and Israelis.
Right. It's a common, it allows 14 million people to vote and 300 parliament members to be elected. Okay. Do you have any question about the assumptions that we can achieve that? Does anybody have any questions about it? I believe that the assumptions could become a reality. I just want to remind you that one day full-fledged war with the Iron Dome and shooting missiles at each other and trying to catch missiles in the air and using cannons and using airplanes and to shoot each other costs more than $100 million a day. One day of war between Israel and Palestine. With $100 million, we can make all these assumptions a reality, in my opinion. Okay, now we need remember, this is a simulation. This is not a lecture. So I need you to volunteer. I need someone to volunteer to be the Israeli Prime Minister in this simulation. Do I have a volunteer for Israeli Prime Minister? Professor Narayan Singh, are you willing to be the Israeli Prime Minister?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Are you willing to be the Israeli Prime Minister in this simulation?
I thought you wanted me to be it.
I'm sorry?
It's Len. I thought you wanted me to be Prime Minister.
Yes, but I prefer someone new if possible.
Oh, okay. That's fine with me.
Is Professor Singh, are you willing to be the Prime Minister of Israel?
All right, no problem.
Okay, so you will now have to assume finality and the political consideration of the existing Israeli Prime Minister, okay? You are not, in this simulation, you are not Professor Singh, you are Benjamin Netanyahu, okay? And you'll have to assume, his personality, okay?
All right.
And you'll have to take into consideration his political considerations, okay? Do we have a volunteer to be the Hamas leader? I need a volunteer for Hamas leader. Len, are you willing to be Hamas leader?
Okay.
Len?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, you're no longer Len in this simulation. You will have to assume his political consideration, okay?
Yeah. I'll have to set up an army.
Okay. Do I have a Palestinian Authority leader? Someone who is willing to be a Palestinian Authority leader in this simulation.
If nobody else wants to do it, I can.
Okay, Giacomo, terrific. Okay. The rest of you, I will ask for you, all of you, if possible, including Shlomo Sand, if you can, be either Israeli or Palestinian parliament member. That means you have to choose a district. You have to choose a city or village that you represent. That village or city could be exclusively Palestinian or exclusively Israeli, or a mixed district. In other words, Palestinian and Israeli. And you will have to be intellectually honest. You'll have to represent that district, and you will have to take into consideration the political and economic needs of your district. You're no longer pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, you pro-district, your district. I will ask each one now for you, and I may ask you, what city do you represent during the simulation? So to be consistent in your duty as a and remain intellectually honest. Let's now have Palestinian parliament member. We need to see how many Palestinian members do we have. Palestinian parliament members, please vote yes, so we know how many Palestinian parliament members we have. Okay. Okay, we have 23 Palestinian parliament members. And let's end the 24, actually, 24. Okay, and now let's have the Israeli parliament members please vote. Israeli parliament members. Okay. All right. We have 14 Israeli, publish it. We have 14 Israeli parliament members. Okay, remember the city or the village you represent and be consistent. Stay that way throughout the day, okay? The first order of business we have to do is we need to pass a, can you stop sharing? Dan, can you stop sharing? Okay. I still see it on my screen, but that's okay. The first order of business we have is to pass a constitution. Remember, we were elected. I am the president. You are the parliament member. We have the existing governments, and now we need to pass a constitution. Now, the Prime Minister of Israel, the Hamas leader, and the PA leaders are not allowed to vote. You represent a different government. But the rest of you are allowed to vote. And Libby, could you please read the Constitution?
We believe that Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation does not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian or Israeli governments, nor to abrogate or undermine any agreements between those governments. We recognize the need to work with the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Our purpose is to resolve conflicts and to expand the relationship between Palestinians and Israelis in a fair and equitable manner. We believe in equal rights under the law. We believe in equal rights under the law, guaranteed human rights, and freedom for all. We voluntarily give the legislatures and the governments of Israel and Palestine veto power over legislation we pass relating to the domain of control of those governments. We believe in the separation of power between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. We believe in the creation of a permanent secular government for all the people residing in Israel and Palestine. We believe in having a separate judicial branch relating to IPC legislation with Israeli and Palestinian judges, with a system to avoid biased decisions based on nationality.
All right, so the Constitution basically states that the Israeli and the Palestinian governments could agree to whatever they want. They could agree to merge, they could agree to create two states, they could agree to create one state. We do not oppose. We are constitutionally prohibited from opposing any agreements between them. However, we also believe that we can pass legislation because those governments are not successful. Those governments are really, in my opinion, they are obstacle to peace. They're not able to give peace. That's my personal opinion. So therefore, the common government says we will pass legislation. And because we have to deal with the existing reality is the existing governments. We have them represented here by their leaders. We have to deal with them. And whenever the law that we pass violate their sovereignty, we will give them a veto power. But if it doesn't violate their sovereignty, they don't have a veto power. So does anyone have, Professor Sand, do you have any questions or comments regarding the Constitution?
Not for the moment.
Okay.
Later I will put forward a few questions, but for the moment it's okay.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions, not comments, questions about the Constitution? I don't hear any questions, so let's have a vote. Palestinian parliament members, please vote to ratify the Constitution. By the way, if you do not ratify the Constitution, then you will be expelled from the government. You will be expelled from the parliament because you need to ratify the Constitution in order to be part of the parliament. Just like any other government in the world, the parliament members are required to accept the Constitution, okay? So let's see what the vote is now. Okay. Can you publish the vote? Okay. We have two votes that voted no. So I don't know if you voted before I spoke or not, but if you continue to oppose the Constitution, you will be expelled from the parliament because you do not accept the Constitution. You have to accept the Constitution. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please vote, Israeli parliament members. Do you support the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation Constitution? Okay. I see a diminished number of Israelis voting, but I'm assuming, let's assume that, I don't know why the rest of you are not voting, but for purposes of this exercise, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. 100% of the, and the polling published the results. 100% of the Israeli parliament members voted yes. So that means that we have a constitution. This is a momentous event in the history of humanity. In other words, this is the first time in the history of the world that the area in Israel, Palestine had passed a constitution that for the people themselves, a secular constitution based on true democracy. And this event is a momentous event. Remember, 5 million people voted and we passed the Constitution. This is not something to sneeze at. This is an important event in the history of humanity. And when you decide to vote and you decide to act in this simulation, please keep that in mind, that we had 5 million people voted and we achieved what no other institution, no other government in the history of the world has achieved. Okay, so congratulations. This news of a constitution and the election is all over the world. It's discussed all over the world, and we are congratulated by every country around the world. All right, let's go. And by the way, when you vote, do not expect to have a perfect legislation because you already agreed to the formula to give the Israeli and the Palestinian governments a veto power. So don't expect a perfect legislation because we have to take into consideration the Israeli and the Palestinian possible objection to the legislation. Now, I was expecting some objection from some of you and Professor Sand, and therefore, because we heard that before, there was no objection from Professor Sand and no doubt was raised by Professor Sand or any of you. But in case you think that the Israeli government or the Palestinian government will object, they don't really have a reason to object. In case you thought that the Israeli and the Palestinian societies will not vote, you're mistaken. They are not a monolithic societies. It is possible to have 5 million people vote if we have total awareness of the of the election. In case you thought that the common government cannot be created because the Israeli or the Palestinian government could undermine it legally, you're wrong. They don't have a legal authority to object. There is nothing in the books that prevents the creation of a common government. In case you thought that the Israeli or the Palestinian government will object, you're wrong. They do not have the moral authority to object. They have given us 75 years of wars, and they may lose legitimacy if they decide to object. And they never attempted to disrupt us before. We actually had these 300 districts created. We actually had the election. We actually had it online. We actually announced it. This is not a simulated event. This is actual full-page ad we had in the New York Times before the last election. The full-page ad was on October 1st, 2012. And we had a full-page ad, and they did not object. They didn't raise any objection, the Palestinian or the Israeli governments. And we did have an election. It was not successful, and it's because there was no awareness. We were hoping to get greater awareness, but we were not able to. That's why we think we need a lot more awareness at this time. So
Joseph, there are some hands that are raised.
okay, I didn't speak up because I don't see the hand. I'm sorry. Who has a question? Question.
Okay, I'm the
Question, not comments.
I'm the leader of Hamas. You may call your group.
Well, I'm sorry. You have not been given an opportunity to speak. We are creating.
I'm looking in front of me. You just had a panel up on comments, and you didn't give anybody a chance to speak.
Correct. I do not. If you have questions, not comments. Okay. Only questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Joseph, I'm just curious to know if we have people amongst us who voted against the Constitution and are rejectionists, they would normally, in your simulation, they would be rejected. We know they're not now. They're amongst us. And my question to you is, do you think they have the ability to skew this as rejectionists have in the last period and still do today? Are they a fifth column in there?
Look, the reason I did not have, I told the people that if they vote against the Constitution, they will be expelled. I did not redo the vote because I didn't want to have a confusion and to have, so I left it at that, okay? They are amongst us, but it's okay. It's not gonna really make a difference for the simulation, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Our first order, does anyone else have any questions?
I actually have a question, Joseph.
Yes.
There was a comment in the chat that I thought was important, and you asked, is there
What's
any...
the question?
The question is, do you think this would be legitimate if that it doesn't include the vote of the Palestinians who live outside of Palestine?
Yes. This is not a Palestinian government. It's not an Israeli government. It's a common government for the people of Israel and Palestine. And the people of Israel and Palestine can create their own government. And so that if you think that this is not legitimate, then look at the Palestinian governments. They never included votes from Palestinians outside Palestine. Neither the PA or Hamas did not include, and they are Palestinian governments. We are not Palestinian government. We are a common government for the people of Israel and Palestine. Any other question? Please ask. Question.
Can I say, you're saying that people, they weren't allowed to vote. People who have the right to return have a right to return to Israel, Palestine, but they're not allowed to return, so therefore they're not allowed to vote. If they were allowed to return, they would be allowed to vote. But the problem is at the moment, is that only Jews are allowed in. The Palestinians aren't allowed back to the homes they were driven
What is
out
your question, sir?
So they should, well, presumably they need to be allowed to vote, shouldn't they? I don't see, I can't
Yeah,
understand why they're not.
okay. I don't know if you were here at the beginning. This is an election for the people of Israel, Palestine, from the river to the sea, 1 million people, to vote for their parliament member and for the president and vice president and their parliament member. Okay, any other question?
Yes.
My question-
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Please ask questions.
I just wanted to say your statement about not including any Palestinian from outside is not correct. Because the Palestine National Council has members who live all over the world, in America, as well as in Egypt, in Jordan, other places. That's it.
Okay,
May I ask a question, please?
please,
Okay, may I call you Joseph?
please,
Joseph.
yes.
Yeah. First of all, I think the question is, at the moment, if you are talking, am I right to say there's a lot of Jews coming to live in Israel? Every day it's happening.
What is your
No
question?
vote.
Ask your question. What is the question?
The same as before, the Palestinian right of return, they should return, and why can't they be allowed to vote? Do they have to come back home? That's my question.
Because this is a common government for the people of Israel and Palestine. It's not an Israeli government. It's not a Palestinian government. Okay? We are, the Israeli and the Palestinians in Israel, Palestine are allowed, even though you are against it, they are allowed to create their own government. There's
Only to allow them to.
nothing that prohibits them from creating their own government. Okay? There is nothing that prohibits them. Whether or not you.
My question is this. You are treating the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority as equals. In reality, they are not. Number one. Number
Yes,
two.
so to answer your question, yes, they are equally responsible, not equally, the Israeli government more, but the way we are dealing with them is we have no choice but to deal with them.
Joseph, you are treating the occupier equal to the occupied. And if
No,
I'm an Israeli,
I am not treating
give,
them. I am creating a common government.
That's an ideal one, but the reality, I have the gun and I'm in control. I'm not going to give it up.
Okay. What is your question?
My question, I mean, you are presenting to us the ideal, but the practical on the ground, it doesn't work what you're talking about.
Okay, that's not a question, that's a comment. What is your question?
The question is from 75 years until now, Israel won the land without the people. Now the problem is.
What is the question, sir?
My question is,
Fahad. What is the question?
I think your scenario is ideal, not practical.
Okay, that's not a question. Does anyone have questions?
Can we set all this aside and continue with the simulation? Yes. This is a very side issue.
Okay. Do you have?
I have a question.
If anyone has any questions, I'll be okay. Zohar, what is your question?
Thank you. I think this will settle this debate. Is it possible within the Confederation that the Palestinian government will decide on the right of return of Palestinians and hence will allow them to eventually vote in the general election in the same way that Israelis allowed Jews come back to Israel and then vote in the Confederate election?
Okay, we are not the Israeli government. We are not the Palestinian government. We are a common government. We are not dismantling the Israeli or the Palestinian government. They can decide whatever they want, okay? We are a separate and independent government, and we are not really telling you what is possible for them to do or not possible, because we are an independent, separate government, and we are concerned about what is it that we can do, not them.
Yeah.
The question.
I have a question following on to Zohar's, if I may. And am I right in thinking, therefore, Joseph, that when you have the Confederation, that it will be deciding issues like right of return, who can vote in the future?
Correct. It can decide each and every issue. It's a legitimate, it's the only legitimate government in Israel, Palestine, because it's the only government that is elected. Therefore, it can decide, and it can consider each and every issue. Yes. Any other question?
So Joseph, just to make sure, the answer to Zohar is yes. At the end, eventually, yes, there will be a discussion. And
Of course, they can decide whatever they want. It's their problem to implement it. Any other question?
Yes, I have a question. Why didn't you mention that Shlomo Sand wrote another book, which is The Invention of the Land of Israel? You only...
He did mention this. He did mention this. You put it in the chat box, we responded. He did mention this. He did mention that Shlomo Sand is the author of The Invention of the Jewish People. He said it twice.
I'm not talking about this.
Yeah.
Shlomo Sand wrote another book called The Invention of the Land of Israel. 2 books he wrote that I read, and I listened to his answering the questions for about 3 hours. He was doing it from London.
I did not mention
I
a lot of
know
books.
something about his history also.
Okay, I did not mention a lot of books that Shlomo Sand wrote. Okay, so it's not for a reason. It's just because we are limited in time.
No, that's not true. I don't believe you, because we had...
All right. Okay. What is the question? What is the question? Okay. Any other question?
Now, even archaeology has proved that they have never been there.
Okay. What is the question, sir? What is the question? Do you have any other question?
No,
my question, where do you get your authority as a federation?
I'm leaving.
Oh,
this is...
We got the authority from the people of Israel and Palestine. We gave 14 million people the right to vote, and the legitimacy comes from the votes that we received. 5 million people voted. That's an excellent question. Any other question?
Yeah. How does 5 million people equal a majority? Because you've got 14 million people, but only 5 million vote?
Correct.
But 5 million is only a third. So what about the other 9 million? What did they do?
Well, okay, the other 9 million include minors that are not allowed to vote. So I estimate that the minors is about 4 million people in Israel, Palestine. So about half of the population did vote. Yes. In the United States, less than half of the population voted. Okay, let's go to our next issue, and that's granting a veto power to the separate governments. Libby, could you please read the legislation? This is a legislation we are passing.
The Confederation is the government of the entire population of Israel and Palestine from the river to the sea. We recognize the Palestinian and Israeli governments and are seeking their cooperation to implement our vision for peace by giving them a veto. We will do our utmost to satisfy the essential needs of each government. We are pleading with the Palestinian and Israeli public to understand that while we would like to pass the best legislation possible to improve their lives, under these constraints, a perfect legislation is not possible. We hereby bestow a veto power relating to legislation affecting sovereignty to the following: the government of Israel on issues in which it is indispensable, the Palestinian Authority on issues in which it is indispensable, Hamas on issues in which it is indispensable, In the event of changes in governments, this legislation may be amended or repealed. The Parliament will decide on indispensability. Vetoes may be bestowed individually or collectively.
Does Professor Sand, do you have any questions regarding this?
No, it's okay.
I'm sorry?
It's okay. No, no.
All right. Does
Any
anyone have
question?
any questions regarding this legislation?
Anna Koretsky has had her hand up for a long time. I don't know whether she still has a question or just hasn't lowered her hand.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi, Anna.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Joseph. I have a question. You mentioned on this writing the government of Israel and the Palestinian Authority. What do you mean? Are we talking about the Confederation or the status quo before the Confederation?
The government of Israel is from the common government, the Confederation. The Palestinian Authority is separate from the common government, and the Hamas is separate. So we have the common government, and we have the government of Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas. Any other questions?
I'm a bit confused because you didn't answer my question. Why we have only one government named the government of Israel, and the Palestinians are represented by just an authority which is more limited?
Because we believe that that's how they refer to themselves. They refer to themselves as the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas refer to itself as Hamas.
Yeah, that's
Right, okay. So this represents currency, the current status quo, not something that you actually want to happen in the future, to be carried on. Would you like this to be carried on?
This represents the current situation, the way they describe themselves.
Great. Is this necessary to be carried on? Do you believe this is necessary to be carried on as such?
What to be carried on? If I had
Confederation, yes.
all these governments will disappear. They are all obstacle to peace. But we
Thank you very much. Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Okay.
How they are, Joe, how they are going to disappear when you are leaving the Israeli government as it is, the
No, I don't think
Palestinian Authority as it is.
I don't think they will disappear.
How I don't, you're going to leave them.
I said if it was up to me, all these governments will disappear and we will have one government for the whole area. But the reality is that they exist.
But if I'm an Israeli, I'm in control. Why to give up my control?
Look, I'm not asking you to give up your control. I'm telling you, if it was up to me, Joseph, okay, all of these governments will disappear. They're all a problem. They're all failing to give peace. They're all dangerous to the people of Israel and Palestine. But I don't think that it is possible to make them disappear. That's why we are proposing a common government, a legitimate government, because those governments cannot disappear. Let's take a vote. Palestinian parliament members, do you please vote on whether or not to grant a veto power to the separate governments? Palestinian parliament members, please vote. Okay, please publish the vote. 82% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of granting a veto power to all these three entities on issues in which they are indispensable. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members, please vote. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Okay, Please publish the vote. 100% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. This legislation is not subject to a veto by the Israeli or the Palestinian government. It is internal to us. Who do we want to give a veto power? If those governments change, if the Israeli government will change, if the Palestinian Authority will change, if Hamas will change, if they are no longer, then we will have our own, we'll change the law if necessary. But you are not given a veto power because it is internally to us. Okay. Our first order of business is declaration of peace. Libby, could you please read the declaration?
Our goal is to be a shining example for peace and tolerance. We believe in the respect for all people, regardless of religion or gender. We are committed to protect all people of all religions and to value the sanctity of life. All people are equal. All religions are equal. The practice of religion is voluntary and shall not be imposed. The land belongs to no religion, and no war shall be imposed on the count of religion. We encourage all governments of the world to adopt this resolution. We hereby submit this declaration to the Israeli government, the Palestinian government, and Hamas, and ask that they will adopt the same.
All right. Any questions regarding this declaration of peace? Professor Sand, Shlomo Sand, do you have any questions or comments?
No, okay. It was
all right.
No, okay.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Question, not comments. Questions, please. Do you have any questions regarding this declaration of peace? Please ask them, because I don't really see who you are. I have a very limited ability to see because I only see one person at a time. So please ask.
Hello.
Wolf has his hand up, and then Anna.
Hello.
Okay, Wolf.
Hello.
Wolf, what is your question?
The third last sentence in the declaration, you say no war shall be imposed on the count. You mean on account of religion. On account, one word, not on account of religion.
All right, so your question is really correcting the grammar. Okay, I appreciate it. Right. All right, any other questions? And
yes, I do have one, Joseph, thank you. Do you believe that Israel in the future could actually play the role like Switzerland is playing?
What is the question, Anna? I'm
yes,
sorry.
do you believe
what is the
that
question?
Israel could become, can you hear me? Do you believe that Israel could become Asia's Switzerland? Not to be involved in any wars, not to have military forces, etc.
Yes. Israel, Palestine, yes, that's the only destiny.
I believe the same. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Questions? No questions? Let's take a vote. Palestinian parliament members, please vote on this declaration of peace. Palestinian parliament members, please vote. Palestinian, do you agree with this legislation? Our declaration, okay? Let's publish the vote. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members voted yes. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members, please vote. Israeli. I'm rushing because we have a lot more business to do, so in this simulation. Okay, publish the vote. 100% of the Israeli parliament members voted. Stop sharing. Okay, let's go to our first order of business in which the Israeli and the Palestinian leaders will have a veto power. Teaching tolerance and understanding. Libby, could you please read the legislation?
Both educational systems to teach tolerance in their public schools. Devote a certain number of hours for both sides to teach the history of the Israelis and the Palestinians. prioritizing teaching Arabic and Hebrew in public schools to achieve proficiency of both languages by Israeli and Palestinian students. Create a mutual task force to ensure the teaching of both languages. Educators to draft textbooks together and arrange for a regular exchange of teachers. Public media on both sides to provide fair and equal coverage daily for the teaching of tolerance, for teaching tolerance. IPC as facilitator to ensure that both sides are fairly represented. We hereby submit this legislation to the Israeli government, the Palestinian government, and Hamas, and we bestow upon them a veto power which may be exercised in the next 60 days.
Okay, so this is the first legislation in which the existing governments have a veto power. Professor Sand, do you have any question regarding?
No, it's okay.
It's okay?
It's okay.
Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question, please, Joseph?
Yes.
Why do you say public schools and not just all schools? There are such things as private schools, and there may be more in the future.
Because the public schools are controlled by the governments, the private schools are not.
But if you have this as a mandate, then you could say that they have to, couldn't you, as legislation?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Very, very good point. Any other question? Anna.
Thank you. I do have one. How would you safeguard and encourage the new generations of both Israelis and Palestinians to accept and adopt to the idea of a confederation that will be based on equality, not only to tolerate, because you mentioned only tolerance, since the two societies right now seem that they are not ready to achieve such situation at the moment?
Well, when we have Israeli and Palestinian parliament members sitting together, passing legislation together of this kind of nature, that would facilitate an understanding that would have a ripple effect into the society itself.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Any other question? Okay, hearing no questions, let's have the Palestinian parliament members please vote. Palestinian parliament, please vote. Do you accept the legislation on tolerance and understanding? Okay, and the polling published the results. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members accepted this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please vote. Israeli parliament members, please vote on the same legislation. Do you support the teaching of tolerance and understanding? Okay, and the polling published the results. 100% of the Israeli parliament. Now, the purpose really is to demonstrate how the common government could pass legislation. It's not so much whether you agree with that legislation. No reasonable person would disagree. It's just to demonstrate how the common government could force the Israeli and the Palestinian leaders to accept legislation that is imposed upon them by the common government. Let's go to the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation? Mr. Prime Minister, Israeli Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation? Okay.
Professor Narian needs to unmute.
Hello.
Are you going to veto this legislation?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Now, you are not Professor Singh now, you are Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you, okay, do you think that within the constellation, within the political thinking of Benjamin Netanyahu, as you are asked to assume his political personality, are you going to veto this legislation as Benjamin Netanyahu with his political personality?
Okay, yes, I will have to veto. There is no alternative.
Okay, let's go to the Hamas leader. Mr. Hamas leader, are you going to veto this legislation?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
The
And
reason is, and I will tell you why, I will not have the IPC impose books in Gaza. They have to have my approval.
okay, let's go to the PA leader. Are you going to veto this legislation?
Unless Israel changes its position and supports this, we will veto it.
Okay, now let me go back to all of you leaders and say, are you willing to, do you have a suggestion on how to amend this legislation that it will be acceptable to your government? Mr. Prime Minister, do you have an amendment that you can suggest to this legislation? Because you always said that the Palestinians do not teach tolerance to their children, that's why we have constant wars, is because the Palestinians teach their children to hate Israelis. And here we have requirement that they teach tolerance, and you are vetoing this legislation. Mr. Prime Minister.
Yeah, basically the location or situation of Israel is such that it requires some adequate safeguards, against international terrorism and also threats which are being posed not only by Palestinians but other neighboring states also.
Mr. Prime Minister, this legislation requires the Palestinians and Israelis to teach tolerance in their school. Why would you be against it?
No, Israel is always tolerant. There is no problem from Israel, but from the others, from the neighboring, the climate and culture which prevails in the neighboring states,
Are you against teaching Palestinians to teaching them tolerance and understanding of Israelis and Palestinians? Are you against that?
No, teaching that doesn't, that doesn't prevent, but by one pretext or the other, there is possibility of infiltration and also misuse of such liberties.
Okay, let's go to.
Can I make a proposal? I'm the president of the Palestinian Authority. In a spirit of compromise, I'm suggesting that perhaps we could start by some baby steps with this idea of teaching tolerance and understanding. And a first practical way could be perhaps to arrange for programs of exchanges of teachers between Palestinian and Israeli schools, where for a certain period of time, Israeli students have a Palestinian teacher, and maybe for some weeks a year or in a year to start with, and then maybe we can build on this towards the sort of legislation that is being.
Mr. Hamas leader, are you accepting that compromise?
No, my problem is I don't trust the Israelis. I don't trust the Palestinian Authority. I want to get approval of all school books coming into Gaza.
Okay, are you aware, Mr. Hamas leader, that all the parliament members from Gaza voted for this legislation?
Well,
you're actually working against your own people.
All the representatives from Gaza are Muslim, and I expect them to have Muslim sympathies, and I wish to have approval of all school books coming into my area.
Yeah, but they already voted. They already voted in favor of this legislation.
I'm in charge.
You may be undermining your own power in Gaza.
I am not a democracy. I am a dictatorship, and I will do what I want to do here. And it's working very fine for me and my family so far. So unless I have authority over all school books, I'm not having any school books come into Gaza I don't approve of.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go on because I don't think that within the constellation in the next 2, 3, 4 minutes, I can convince the Prime Minister and the Hamas leaders. But this is to demonstrate that if we take into the totality, if we take the time, days and years to show the people of Israel and Palestine that their leaders are dangerous to them, then we can persuade those leaders to change their mind. But we cannot do it in the next 5 minutes. So I'm going to go on to the next legislation. The purpose is to show that reasonable legislation could pass if we take the time. And let's go to the next legislation, and that's common police force. Libby, could you please read this legislation?
Equal number of Israeli and Palestinians at each level. Distinct uniforms for the common police force different from the Israeli or Palestinian police force. Independent of the Israeli and Palestinian security forces. In cooperation with the separate Israeli and Palestinian authorities. Address sensitive religious, cultural, and language requirements. Facilitate the operation of the joint economic zones. Investigate corruption by administrators who refuse to teach tolerance. Investigate allegations of intolerance and racist hate crime against Israelis or Palestinians. Assist in managing checkpoints. Guard the parliament building and threats against members of the Confederation. Facilitate access to and safety of religious facilities. We hereby submit this legislation to the Israeli government, the Palestinian government, and Hamas, and we bestow upon them a veto power which may be exercised in the next 60 days.
Does anyone have any questions regarding this legislation? Question, Professor Sand, do you have any questions regarding this?
It's okay.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions regarding the legislation?
Yes. As the leader of Hamas, I want to know if this restricts me from having my own resistance forces.
It does not.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any? Anna, please ask your question.
What do you mean by checkpoints?
What do I mean by checkpoints?
Yes.
Can
you elaborate on that? If they're both checkpoints for both
societies? The checkpoints are the areas in which Israeli soldiers are standing and preventing Palestinians from going past a point and preventing Israelis from entering a point. And there are numerous of them in Israel, between Israel and the West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah, I see, but I meant since this policy is against your confederation's values, why would you still have them? Why would you maintain them? This is actually a proof of intolerance and inequality.
What's your question?
Why would you still maintain the checkpoints if your confederation is based on equality between the two societies? Why would you still maintain them?
The checkpoints are maintained by the Israeli government. We do not maintain the checkpoints.
But you're talking about your confederation. This is your own Israeli confederation values
yes.
and policies.
Okay.
Why would you agree with that?
Because we do not agree with that. We are passing legislation that is not perfect. I already said that at the beginning. Perfection is not a possibility for us. Why? Because we accepted the existence of the Israeli and the Palestinian governments. And in order for them to cooperate with us, we give them a veto power. Okay? We are not accepting the checkpoints. We are dealing in the best way possible for us to give as much peace to the Israelis and the Palestinian people.
I say my sub question then would be, since you don't accept it, what do you mean by assist in managing those checkpoints? How would you achieve that?
Well, instead of having Israeli soldiers, to have Palestinian and Israeli police officers that belong to the common government, not the Israeli government, not the Palestinian government, so that they speak Arabic and Hebrew, and that they can communicate in Arabic and Hebrew with the people in Israel and Palestine.
Right, I see. Thank you.
So what happens if a Palestinian wants to walk through this checkpoint and the Israeli police want to stop them? Who has authority there?
Right now, the Israeli policeman has authority. We are passing legislation to replace the Israeli authority, the common police force, and we will work with the Israeli and the Palestinian government to make the area safe and humane for both sides.
So who's got the authority? Is it got guns? Is the common police force got guns? So if an Israeli policeman says no and then takes the gun out, what happens?
The common government, this is, now you're getting into technicalities, okay?
That's what's going to happen.
This is a very significant.
It may happen, but the common police force will make its own analysis of what's necessary, but it's going to be far better than the Israeli government, the Israeli police force.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
I'm a little bit confused about the whole thing today. I thought we were going to hear from the Shlomo Sand.
Yes,
and then there will be.
You are. As soon as we are practically done, and then I said we will have presentation by Shlomo Sand, and we have question and answer.
It's already 1:30 in North America.
Okay, we are done with 1 hour. This simulation is 2 hours.
Yeah, because I'm very interested to hear that.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Okay, let's have the Palestinian parliament members, please.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
So even with the hypothetical side of the situation, the common police force has distinct uniforms, right?
Correct. It's not only distinct uniform, it also distinct, it's under the jurisdiction of the common government, yes.
Theoretically, correct?
Well, now, no, we are simulating. We are simulating them. Okay, so we already chose a common government. I am the president and we have a parliament.
But Joseph, I have a question. Please consider it not as a technical one. So there is occupation during the establishment of this confederation. The checkpoints, are they occupation checkpoints?
Yes.
And if they are, so
yes,
what's
yes,
the common
they are occupation checkpoints, yes.
So the common police
Of course,
force,
otherwise, like I said, if it was up to us, we would remove the Israeli government, we would remove the Palestinian government, we will remove the Hamas government, and we will be the only legitimate government for the whole area. And there will be no occupation, okay? But we have to deal with reality, and the reality is,
in this reality, the common police force, who are these people? Consider
They
it
are-
technical, but it's actually, it's very important to understand. These people are also Palestinian from West Bank and Gaza, and Israelis from inside Israel.
yes, Yes.
But
yes.
they're not allowed to go through the checkpoints because of the occupation. So how can they join a common police force?
Well, we will see to it that we will have Palestinians and Israelis in the common police force. They are under our government. I am the president. We have parliament members. And they will serve.
Who gives you the authority as a president and as a confederation to do that?
I got the authority by, I am the only legitimate government president in that area because I was elected. We had an election for we allowed 14 million people to vote. We had 5 million people voted, and I received 1.5 million votes. I have the authority. I'm the president.
Could I just display this like as a hypothetical theory as well?
You can do whatever you want. You ask me, the simulation.
You're wrong.
You may have difficulty with imagination, okay? But we already agreed, this is part of the simulation, that and I asked you at the beginning, do you have any problem with the simulation? With the assumptions, you didn't raise your hands. So from now on, we are acting as if the assumptions are the existing reality.
But that's using like a hypothetical sense of the astronomically. I don't know if that's really
okay. Look, whatever you can call it, whatever you want. But we said at the beginning that we are assuming facts. That's.
I mean, I get that. It's just the problem that, like, you know, with the legislation of the Israeli government, you know, the Palestinian government, the Hamas,
What's your question?
You know what? Never mind. Save it for later.
Does anyone have any questions? Please.
Yes, I do.
Okay, Anna, what's your question?
Mr. President of the Parliament.
I like that. Okay, now you're accepting it. I like that. Okay.
Yes, I am accepting. Yes, I am accepting it.
Okay,
Would you support even primarily the thought of the gradual alteration, modification, and eventual how can I say that, a stopple of these checkpoints, the eradication of them gradually?
I can tell you that as the president, I will do whatever I can to remove those. Okay, I got Joy Baker is requesting remote control. I don't know what to do with that.
Oh, sorry, that was my bad. I was trying to click the unmute button, but there's like this remote control access. I'm sorry about that. Forget it.
As the president, I will do my to remove those checkpoints immediately. Okay. And I will do whatever I can to embarrass the president and the prime minister of Israel for creating those checkpoints. Okay. But I have to do it in such a way that the Israeli will feel that they are safe and secure, even though I think, so that's what I will do as the president. Yes.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you very much for this.
All right. Can we have the Palestinian parliament members please vote? Palestinian parliament members. In the polling, share the results. 100% of the Palestinian parliament members agree. Let's Israeli parliament members please vote. Israeli parliament members. Okay, in the polling, share the results. 75% of the Israeli parliament members voted yes. And let's now go to the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation? Israeli Prime Minister.
Yeah.
You are?
In fact, the common police force will be detrimental to the safety and security of Israel and its people, and therefore I veto this legislation.
Okay, you are aware that 50% of this police force are Israelis. A lot of them probably served in the Israeli military, and they are they have their families live in Israel as well. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the, like I said, I'm not trying to, if I had more time, I would be able to use political influence and political ability to change your mind, to show you that you're unreasonable. But the purpose is to show how this common government will work. Let's go to the Hamas leader. Are you going to veto this legislation?
No, I'm very happy with it.
Okay, and let's go to the PA leader, Palestinian Authority leader. Are you accepting this legislation?
I will not veto it if Israel lifts its own veto, and to encourage Israel to lift its veto, I suggest that we have a joint, a clear high-level joint police committee that oversees this joint police force, and it is with people appointed directly by the presidents of the three authorities. So do we have a complete control, and we can all veto everybody else's initiatives, so that everyone feels that they are in control of this police force.
All right. And Mr. Prime Minister of Israel, did you change your mind?
Yeah, still there are the safeguards are required for safety and security of the people, especially the people of Israel.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to beat this to death. I'm just going to, let's go to Professor Shlomo Sand and get his impression of what you've seen up to now, and your general impression of whether a common government could work and make peace, and then we'll have you make your comments, and then we'll have question and answer. Professor Sand?
Yeah, what you want me to expose my opinion about all the project, or something specific?
Well, I asked you specifically at the beginning, do you think the common government could make peace? Do you think it is implementable? And do you think there is a downside for the Israelis and Palestinians to, if this government is created? And I ask you to judge all of that, not based on perfection, but based on the alternative.
You see, I don't believe in a confederation. Europe is a confederation. Canada is a federation. Belgium is a federation. Britain is a federation. Spain is a federation. What is the difference between Europe and all the countries that I mentioned, the states that I mentioned? That there is a common citizenship for the people in Canada, a common citizenship in Belgium, etc., etc. I don't believe in a confederation, really. I'm not against, because a confederation is made between two states. Federation is something differently. And the most important thing is that for me is to change the situation, the actual situation about the Israel-Palestine existence. We are living today in one state between the river and the sea. In this space, there are more or less 7.5 million of Israelis, non-Arabs, and 7.5 Palestinians. A part are Israeli citizens, a part are living under the condition of apartheid. I'm thinking politically how we can change a regime of apartheid to a regime of federation with one citizenship for all the people that are living in this space. Now, I am very skeptic. I am pessimistic about the development today, political development. One thing I'm quite sure that we cannot build two states between the river and the sea. I think this option that I believe in it for half a century is not actual. Continue to support two states for two people. It's not only utopia, it's cover a reality to continue the situation that we are living today. This is the reason that following, for example, Menachem Begin, in following most of the important intellectuals that were living from the beginning of the 20th century, from Echad Ha'am, Jabotinsky, till Aleph Bet Yeshua, if you want, they believe that in this space, we cannot build two states. In this space, there are two people that have to learn to live together. Then I repeat, my point of departure in the political situation is getting citizenship for the Palestinian living in occupied territories in Gaza. I expose it clearly. I am sorry that my English is not perfect.
No,
but
it's
I
good.
will
It's
try.
good. Let me ask you this. What if the common government gives citizenship to everyone in Israel, Palestine?
This has to be, for me, the first step. Not to build a Europe, but you see, for example, Swiss started as a confederation. And very quickly it's changed, even the name rest confederation, Swiss is a federation. I mean, we have to make it more clear. There are a lot of Palestinians, especially in the United States, that want a one democratic state. There are others like you that want a confederation. I'm critical about the two options because one democratic state, one vote, one citizen, don't give expression to the specificity of the Israelis and the Palestinians. You understand me? Like, you know, I'm not that Belgium will become a democratic state. I think that the federation that exists in Belgium with all the difficulties, it's much better than one democratic state. This is the reason to keep representation of the two people, and I'm for, if you want, two governments in the federation or two expression, a political expression of the two identity. Then I am not for one democratic state. I am not for a confederation of two states because we have to pass, you know, to arrive to a confederation, we have to build a Palestinian state because you cannot make a confederation without another state. And as I don't believe that Israel will let another state to be built in the West Bank, okay? Then I think that we have to concentrate today on one target, very important, to look for equality between the two people. Inequality started with political, juridical equality of citizenship. I hope that I made it clear.
No, you're making it very, very clear, very clear.
If there is questions about it, I would like to answer.
Okay, but we proposed a common government. Do you?
It's okay. Build common government, I'm not against. In the federation, there is a common government. In Switzerland, in Belgium, in Canada, in Britain, in Spain, there is a common government, okay? This is not a problem for me. The problem is that under the one government will be a political expression or specific to the two people. You understand me? You know, there is a lot of description in the past. From Echad Ha'am, Martin Buber, Hannah Arendt, they spoke, all of them, about a federation. They understood that in this space of territory, we cannot build two states. It's not possible. It's
Right.
not,
Right.
you understand, it's not possible.
Right.
The way to it, I'm not very optimistic, but one thing is important to understand. This situation today cannot be forever. I don't know any case that a people occupied in this, kind of terms. I don't believe that we can stop the bloodshed, of the situation today. No, I believe 50 years, I believe in two states for two people, and I repeated it, and I was against the occupation from the end of '67. When I returned from Jerusalem, I was a soldier in Jerusalem, I was fighting. I was so upset, and I started to write on the walls of Tel Aviv, of the city of Tel Aviv, against the occupation, in the end of '67. Oh, it's 56 years. And last year, I stopped to believe that the solution of two states for two people is possible. And then I decided to write my last book, the last month. And I tried to look over all the expression in the history of Zionism in the building of the Israeli people. I tried to look after opinions. And I found, I was so astonished that so many pacifist Zionists felt so badly about the colonization of Zionism, the land of Palestine, and they started to propose federations, as I say, from the end of the 19th century. From the end of the 19th century, we can look on the intellectual map of the Zionism of the left, of the pacifist Zionism, and to see that they were sure that two states between the river and the sea cannot be built.
Do you believe that Zionism is helpful or to the Israeli people, the Jewish people, or the Palestinian people?
No, I don't think. Somebody mentioned it. More than 10 years ago, I wrote the book, How Jewish People Were Invented. I mean, the invention of the Jewish people. No, I don't believe that in the history existed Jewish people. I believe that in this process in Palestine, we got constructed two peoples, an Israeli people and a Palestinian people. I don't believe that the Jewish people existed for 2,000 years. And like a lot of others, I think that in some moment, when Europe rejected the Jewish from the space of Europe, they make builds of the Zionism that started to colonize the land. And by the way, build Israeli people with the language, with the culture. You can say that it's not so lovely people, but that Israeli people exist in the Palestinian, like the Hamas or the Jihad Islamic, that they don't understand the existence of an Israeli people, that even it was built by the colonization, the Zionism succeed to build an Israeli people. Not to consider it in all the process of peace, it will be a very, very important mistake. You understand me? The same way, I think that the Zionist colonization built also the Palestinian people. I don't exist 200 years ago, 100 years ago, a Palestinian exists. Today, there is a Palestinian people and an Israeli people. One is, if you want, that I will put it forward, yes, an Israeli Jewish, but Israeli Jewish, and Palestinian, yeah. And these two people that were created in this process of colonization, they have to learn to live together. And the steps, there are not a lot of people that knows that Jabotinsky, this militarist liberal in Zionism, was also for a binational state. not to speak about Begin, Menachem Begin, when he arrived to power in 77, he wasn't for a binational state, but he was to give all the Arabs that were conquered in 67 to give an Israeli citizenship. Begin, not the left Zionism. Menachem Begin proposed. In my book, I expose all these positions.
Which book?
This book, the last book that I wrote. You see,
In Hebrew. Okay,
in Hebrew.
Can you hold it?
Now it is translated to French. It is translated. It doesn't appear yet, and I'm looking to publish it also in United States.
All right, but let me ask you specifically, and then what is wrong with the formula that we? Do you see anything wrong with the formula? Forget about the word confederation. We are proposing common government. Okay, independent, separate from the Israeli and separate from the Palestinian government. Okay,
it's okay. No. The problem is my point of the part is a common citizenship, equally political equality against the apartheid today.
So if we pass,
I want to start from the below. You understand? Like Menachem Begin say, we cannot become a South Africa. He say about Rhodesia. We have to give citizenship to all the people that are dominated by the Israeli government, starting with this point of view, and after it, passing also to juridical rights, political rights, citizen rights, and all the other rights. And to be honest with you, because I appreciate a lot your work, the government of today in Israel, in Gaza, in Ramallah, I don't believe that the three of them can arrive to this position that I expose. Now, to make it forward, you see, most of the heroes in my book about the binationalism in federation in the thinking of the left Zionists, they are not liberal Zionists, better to say, most of them were religious people. Martin Buber was religious. In others that I don't want to mention the name because I believe that you don't, but there are a lot of religious people before 48 Zionists that were for a federation or confederation. Then the problem for me is not the religion, the Muslim religion or the Jewish religion. The problem for me is in the last quarter of the 20th century, the symbiose, the synthesis between religion and nationalism in both sides become more and more radical. The problem for me is
the
not the
politicization of religion. The politicization of religion
for itself, it's not a problem. The problem is don't forget that, for example, Nazism and fascism were constructed without religion. But in the last quarter of the 20th century, we see in all the places of what we call the post-colonial war, a kind of radicalization of the religion. First of all, in Israel, see, between Martin Buber, Ernest Simon, very religious people, in Ben Gvir, in Smutrich, there is a space of unfinished space. You understand?
Yeah.
Now, it's very important to understand that 30 years ago, 50 years ago, a lot of people in the resistance, the Palestinian resistance, were not religious. George Habash, Naif Hawatmeh, they were, like me, they were not religious. From time to time, they expose some solutions. It has to be clear. Hamas can be pragmatic. I am for recognizing Hamas, but I don't believe that Hamas can bring us to a kind of confederation or federation, because the basic idea of the Hamas is to build an Islamic state, to give rights to the minorities. But the concept of division between two people cannot enter to the Hamas vision of the future. You understand me? This makes me pessimistic, but not fatalistic. You know, I'm not fatalistic, but I am very pessimistic because this process of Ben Gvir and Jihad Islamic, the Hezbollah, it's a phenomenon that we find it also in India today. You know, the Hinduism, I don't know if the people follow it. It's terrible what happened in India with the radicalization of the Hinduism that was 80, 90 years ago, something different completely under Gandhi and under Nehru, etc. Today, there is a kind of radicalization of religion. And maybe it's because the weakness of religion, not the force of religion. Religion is working with a kind of national radicalization today. You understand me?
Yeah.
But I'm not, you know, I'm not optimistic, but I'm not fatalistic. I know that these two people cannot live differently in the future. You understand? They are forced to continue.
You know, you remind me, as far as the simulation, you remind me of Noam Chomsky, because Noam Chomsky gave us a great idea when he came to this, and you're giving us a great idea too, which is to pass legislation for common citizenship. I think that would make a huge difference, and I'm going to adopt.
And after this, first of all, the fight has to be common citizenship. After to build all the institutions, the army, etc. But we started with the equality. This is most important. Apartheid or equality. There is not other choice.
Yeah. Let's go to Shlomo and then Giacomo. They have questions. And then you can raise your hand if you have questions for Professor Sand.
So I have a very short question to Shlomo Sand is what is the solution if it was up to you? How would you go about it exactly?
I want to understand what we have to do to arrive to this solution.
Yeah, and so this is one attempt to get into some common agreement between Israelis and Palestinians about how we can live together. Now, I think citizenship, I totally agree, is like an obvious outcome of this. But how would you, I mean, if you had the solution, if you could start a movement, what it will be about? What will be on your flag, besides, of course, the citizenship? How would you go?
The flag has to be, the flag is politically to give in one state expression of the two people. You understand me? In one state, the expression of two identities. Now, the fight has to be, you know, to start to propose to build movements in the Israeli society. You know, after questions that were put before Palestinian in the West Bank, it's very interesting that a lot are not against the idea of citizenship, Israeli citizenship. We have to understand that living under, you know, I'm not in a good place to criticize the Palestinian Authority, but we were too nice to the post-colonial world because our anti-colonialism, we were too nice to the post-colonial world about the liberalism, basic liberalism. You agree with me, I hope. You see, it's not only about Palestine, it's most of the countries, the states that were liberated from the terrible colonialism that didn't develop liberal democracy. You understand? And to be today, you know, one of the reasons that I started to think about the federation or living together, I have to admit it was a year and a half that I heard about the Palestinian that crossed the border to be in the Israeli-Palestinian and not in to be in Israeli prison and not in a Palestinian prison because he was gay. I was shocked hearing it. You understand me? I am clear?
Yeah, yes. You are.
Now, I remember one of the reasons that start to think that it's not possible what we are fighting for, the fact that he crossed the border, was quite be killed, to be in an Israeli prison because he is gay. I remember, it's a little story, but it shocked me so much that it forced me to think differently about the conflict. Now, I didn't lost hope about the Palestinian representation, but I know that we have to stop to be, how I say, stop to be, naive about the representation of the Palestinian today. It will not continue if we will fight for them with all our force in Israel. I didn't lose hope because, I met Palestinian, and I think that the fight for federation between Israel and Palestinian with one citizenship, equal citizenship, will keep the two people in life. Because I'm afraid that before arriving to it, we have to pass a few catastrophes, especially because the position of Israel, especially, you understand?
Exactly.
Voila.
Yeah, I know, I agree. By the way, so first of all, in a way, the other side of what you're saying is annexing the West Bank and giving citizenship to everybody, basically what Begin said. Is this the first
Begin
step?
said it. You can, I believe you can look in the Wikipedia maybe, or online you will find in my book, I gave all his speech in 77 that we don't want to become a Rhodesia. In 77, he used the word, the name of Rhodesia, not South Africa, because it was worse in that time in Rhodesia. And he say, we will not become Rhodesia. We have to give everybody that asks an Israeli citizenship. No, he didn't become my leader because of it, okay? But there are very few Israelis that know this truth, that the leader of the right, of the Israeli right, was much more liberal than the left Zionists today in Israel. Much more liberal than Bibi Netanyahu. Sorry.
Let's go to Giacomo, then Len, then Rasha.
Yes, so merci beaucoup, Monsieur Zan, pour votre présentation.
Merci à vous d'écouter.
Thank you very much for your example about the Palestinian prisoner who being gay, preferred an Israeli prison. That's a very interesting and illuminating example. I'm Italian, and I have a European passport, an Italian passport, which is a European passport. The experience of citizenship can start with little gestures. A passport does not establish citizenship, does not make people feel they belong to one country, but it is a first little step. And Europe recently has had some major steps that have happened that have made Europeans more aware of their common space, a common polity. For instance, COVID-19, it was a joint challenge. Now the Ukraine war, they are also working together on these very big challenges. And these things bring people together. So my question to you very quickly is, going to this IPC, the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, I see this as exactly the same sort of thing, a small incremental beginning towards forming a common polity, having people who are working together in a parliament, members from different cultures, different religions, different mentalities that come together. The issue of gay treatment would be a beautiful subject, for instance, for the IPC to address too. Go ahead.
I didn't say that I'm against confederation. I say that I don't believe that because arriving to a confederation, you have passed by building two states. I mean, we have to recognize a Palestinian state before that we can start to think about a confederation. in this historical situation that we are being today, I don't believe that Israel will accept a Palestinian state on the border of 67. Sorry?
מעניין שהיום הזכרתי את השם שלך.
Something is wrong here.
Somebody
is speaking. Sorry, Mister, you are disturbing.
Yeah, no,
You heard him?
Israel, yeah, he.
Okay. I will continue. I'm not against a confederation like in Europe, but I say that to arrive to confederation, the political process is to build an independent Palestinian state in Gaza and the West Bank. I don't believe in any case today that the Israeli government will accept a Palestinian state on the border of 67. By the way, in the Oslo agreement, they didn't accept a state of 67 borders, especially today. Now, the other thing is there are 850,000 of Israelis, non-Arab, that are living in the West Bank. I repeat, with the Jerusalem East, there is 850,000 Israelis are living in the West Bank. Do you think that somebody can take them out and bring back to Israel? This is one question. The second question that I say about confederation, non-federation, there are 2 millions, more than 2 millions Palestinians living in Israel. Now, the reason that I say that we have to fight for equality, political equality, concern all these problems. Israel today is living in apartheid. It has to be clear. 56 years in apartheid. In the United States accepted and continue to speak about two states. 850,000 of Israelis non-Arab. You know why I say Israeli non-Arab? Because a lot of them are not considered as Jews in Israel. I'm speaking all the Russians, that their mother was not a Jew. You understand me? There are a lot of immigrants from Russia that live in the occupied territories. You understand me? Then I think that the orientation today on both sides, in the sides of Israelis, in the sides of Palestinians, is to ask equality. The first thing to fight today is equality.
All right, let's go to Land, then Rasha, then Samir.
I agree with Shlomo on only one thing, is that there must be a two-state solution before there's any further confederation. I would like to remind Shlomo and everybody on here that it's been the Israelis, even the Zionists before Israel was formed, that were prepared to share the land, which under international law belongs to the Jewish people, which is all of mandatory Palestine. It is the Arabs that refused. It was the Arabs that started the Nakba, which was a straight, simple, unashamedly attempt at genocide. In 67, it was Israel again offered to make peace, and Khartoum were the no.
That's not true.
Okay,
you're lying.
But you shut up and let me. You shut up and don't call me a liar, and you let me finish my piece. When Yasser Arafat came in with the Oslo Accords, it was a fraud. He told the Arab leaders that the purpose of him accepting Oslo was to turn Israel into a Palestinian state, period. And as far as 850,000 Arabs or Jews living in Judea and Samaria, which is their right under international law, there are 81,000.
Len, what is your question?
Sorry.
There is no question here. I'm giving a lecture.
International law.
Shlomo's giving a lecture. And no. And when you, Shlomo, call Israel apartheid, you're an anti-Semite by my country's definition.
Thank you very
So
much.
that
I
it's
stopped to
fine.
hear you.
And you also refer to Israeli Arabs as Palestinians, whereas only 15% of them call themselves Palestinians. And Israeli Arabs are doing very nicely, thank you. Go to any hospital, you'll see them as doctors and nurses and patients. So there has to be a separation because of the poison that the Arabs have been fed over all these years.
You're out of line.
And there has to be a two-state solution. And I'm not going to define the borders. And by the way, there already is a confederation. It's called the Abraham Accords. And it's only going to be the Arab League that is going to convince the Palestinians to participate.
Elaine,
It's not going to be America, and it's not going to be Joseph, and it's not going to be Europe, and it's certainly not going to be the United Nations. But it's the Arab League, which is a court
Shlomo,
to solve
very
the
shortly,
problems.
Shlomo, do you
very
want to
shortly
respond
to
to Elaine?
answer, because I cannot have a dialogue with a person that called me anti-Semite, first of all.
Well,
But
the country of
stop,
Canada
I don't
is
want to
not
dialogue.
like
After you
nonsense.
called me anti-Semitic, you have not the right to continue the conversation.
Then you haven't got the right to continue. either.
Okay,
You
I
call
told
let's
you,
Israel
stop-
I
apartheid.
told
let's
you,
stop this.
shame of you. Now,
Shame on
okay.
you. Shame on
Okay,
you.
one little example about the Oslo agreement. One little example. Rabin, in all the process of Oslo agreement, didn't want to sign that Israel will stop the colonization, the colonies. He didn't want to admit that he will take back even one colony. I'm speaking, and I spoke with people that were near Rabin in that time. I remember I spoke with people and asked them why after the killing in Hebron, yes, that shocked the Israeli society, the killing of Baruch Goldstein. And why in that time Rabin didn't have the courage to take out the Jewish colony in Hebron, in the middle of the city of Hebron?
Because it's their
I
country.
asked,
No,
I
let
don't
him
speak with
finish.
you.
Let
Finished.
Shlomo finish.
I don't speak with you. You don't understand it? Now, I asked the military advisor of Rabin, why Rabin, that was shocked by what happened in Hebron by Baruch Goldstein, I asked why you didn't take out in this moment the colony in Hebron, and everything could be developed differently. He answered me, it's Eitan Haver, by the way. He answered me, we didn't have the courage. Why? Because of people like you. Because of people like you.
So you're saying
Wait,
No, I don't want to
I'm sorry.
continue.
So you're saying,
personal
I don't want to hear you.
Let's go to Russia. Russia, please.
So you're saying because of one Jewish
Sorry, I
tribe,
don't want to
Let's-
speak with you.
let's-
You don't
let's-
understand? Anti-Semitic?
What?
Where you are living? Where you are living?
I live
You are
in
living in
Canada.
Tel Aviv? Where you are living?
In Canada.
Ah, in
All right,
Canada.
let's stop this
Exactly.
nonsense. Let's stop this nonsense. Let's go to
I
Russia.
don't want to continue to have a conversation with this guy. If not, I will go out.
So
Yeah,
go
okay.
out.
No.
You're providing propaganda.
Len, you are
And
not
you are the
fair.
rejectionist.
Can you
Len,
please-
you
I
are
have
the
a question
problem.
for
Can you
you.
please mute
Len, please be quiet.
Please
A shame.
mute Len. Okay.
Here,
All right.
read my
Okay.
book. Maybe
Okay.
you'll learn something.
There's no
from
way
let's-
to mute
let's go
Len.
to-
Read
let's
my
go to-
book.
Okay, no, we can't go like that. Let's go to, please, Russia, sharp.
Okay, Professor Sand, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. I know it's based on academic work, and I want to share. Part of these 2 million Arabs, most of them consider themselves Palestinians, live in Israel with an Israeli citizenship. And I want to ask you about the citizenship dream, let's say, according to you, what kind of joint citizenship it would be if I tell you I am Russia, a Palestinian who lives in Israel. I'm 44 years old and I don't want to be called Israeli. It's not fair for me as an Arab to be called Israeli because Israel sounds Jewish to me. And I'm not Jewish. I'm sorry for that. I'm not going to convert as well. So did you think about this joint citizenship? How would it look like for you?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. After the last conversation, it's helped me a lot. Now,
just forget about it, please.
Yeah.
Focus here.
I want to make it clear. I am very pessimistic, but I continue to fight, living in Tel Aviv, and continue to fight. But all my life, even before that, I arrived to the conclusion that we have to build a federation. Even when I was for two-state solution, I believe that Israel has to be a state not of the Jewish of the world, not for the person that spoke before, but only for Israelis. Now, it's very important. You see, I had, and I continue to have friends, and they are more and more call themselves Israeli Palestinians. Now, you have to know that the Israeli Arabs was accepted after 48, 49, even by the Communist Party that was composed mostly with Arabs. Mahmoud Darwish, for example, that I was a friend of him, you know, it's written in the Wikipedia that everybody knows. You say he called himself Arab Israelis and not a Palestinian. And I'm speaking as 64. He wrote his poem, very, very important poem, wrote, I am an Arab. In that time, most of the Palestinians in Israel considered themselves Israeli Arabs. You know, Emil Habibi, Tufik Tuvi, the member of the Communist Party, considered themselves in that time. Now, the last question is the most important. How I see, I was against the Jewish state before my opinion about binationalism. I think that Israel has to be the state of its citizenship, citizens, and not the state of the guy that spoke before you. Now, I think that, you see, the image that I have of this federation is Haifa. You know the city of Haifa. The city of Haifa, even in Haifa, there is inequality between Palestinian and Israeli, but to compare it to Jerusalem or to other places, you see a kind of collaboration between Palestinian and Israelis, a very, very strong. They are everywhere, in the university, in the hospitals, you know, everywhere. In the kind of this binationalism of Haifa can be a model, even if it's not based on equality, completely equality. You understand me? But it can be a model how we can live with the Palestinian in one state federative. You understand?
Okay,
now,
I see your dream, but I'm asking. One
sentence. I don't see that it is ideal Haifa. You understand? But this is the way to collaborate and to live together with Palestinians.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Let's take Haifa and say there are, you call it by nationality. Let's see them as 2 ethnicities or 5 ethnicities, okay?
No, 2 people, not ethnicities. I don't believe in ethnic.
Okay, you don't believe. Let's take Belgium, okay? Not Haifa, Belgium. They're all Belgians, but there are different nationalities under this one citizenship. What kind of citizenship, joint common citizenship, you would see in Israel? Would you see it Israeli citizenship or something else? That's my question.
Something else. You know, I didn't like Gaddafi. You remember Gaddafi? You are young, but
yes, Esratin.
Israel team. Now, you understand, I'm not against new names. You see, it's important to understand that Israel identity exists very strongly. You understand? In the Palestinian identity exists in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Haifa, more and more. In the last manifestation we saw in Haifa, especially, a lot of, Haifa citizens, Arab Palestinians, bringing the flag of Palestine, more and more. All my friends in Tel Aviv manifestation brought the flag of Palestine to the manifestation. You heard about it. Yesterday, in Haifa, the police took by force the Palestinian flag. Yes, I want to build one flag between the Israeli flag and the Palestinian flag, to combine it, to make a little bit color to the Israeli flag that has not really color. You understand me? Then equality is not only civic equality, culturally also, you understand? I think for this, every Israeli Jewish origin, citizen, child, pupil has to study Arab. Every Palestinian has to study Hebrew. Why? To become more stronger. You understand me? To become more stronger. And I think that the two languages has to be equal. You understand? And we have to fight for it daily in Israel, not in Canada.
Thank
All
you.
right, let's go to Samir, then Shlomo, then Sergio, then John, then Jeffrey, then Fahid. Samir.
Hi, everybody. Yes, thank you, Professor Sand. I agree with Professor Sand, and I think what he proposed should have happened long time ago. If Israel got the smart leadership, but unfortunately, they got stupid leadership like Netanyahu, and that didn't happen. In any way, what he proposed, what Professor Sand proposed, actually it's happening now. It started to happen right now in Israel-Palestine. And
the integration.
Yes, it started to happen with the pro-democracy movement. And yesterday, just yesterday, I met with Jonathan Kuttab, the famous Palestinian writer and attorney and activist. And we talked, and I gave my comments and ideas. My idea to him right now, at this moment, what Israel used to be, it used to be democracy for Jews. Now, Israel is a dictatorship under Netanyahu. And now we have the pro-democracy movement. The pro-democracy movement, it is mainly by Israeli Jews. So I suggested to him, okay, what about the Palestinian Israelis or Arab Israelis? They are about, as you said, about 2 million. He said about 1.5 million, but yeah, 2 million, 1.5, 2 millions. What about those Israeli Palestinian? If they join the movement right now, along with the pro-democracy, which is, I estimated about maybe 2.5 millions. And I estimated that about 3 millions of the pro-apartheid Netanyahu regime, 3 million Israeli in that camp. If you add up 2.5 million to 1.5 million Palestinian, that will be 4 million. So that will be more than the regime. And they, if they join, if the Palestinian Israeli join today the pro-democracy movement, their slogan, their banner should be democracy for all, democracy for all. And
thank you
it
very
might
much.
take a year, 2 years, but that should be the aim, and that will end apartheid, will end the occupation, and it will be one democratic state. And definitely in the West Bank and Gaza today.
Thank you very much.
What I suggest also, what they should do at this moment, because I just talked about what it's called Israel proper or pre-67 Palestine. But what about the West Bank and Gaza? What they should do? Palestinians over there, what they should do, they should also go in big demonstrations under the slogan also pro-democracy, and end up bringing down the PA and Hamas governments. And we want democracy. We want one democratic state, one secular democratic state. And that could happen now, year from now, 2 years from now, but that should be the goal.
Okay,
and
thank
that's
you
what
very
I
much.
think. And Jonathan Kuttab agreed with me, and he thought it was a great idea. He thought it was a great idea.
Thank you very much. The last 2 months, I wrote 4 articles in the journal Haaretz about 4 articles about the fact that you cannot fight for liberal rights in Israel in ignoring the fact that 40 kilometers from Tel Aviv, people are living without any rights. 4 articles I wrote about this question, how it's possible. Yeah, you can see it. Maybe a few of them were translated to English in the Haaretz. But let me to say something more. I don't believe in a one democratic state. That it is a bluff. I think that this federation, democratic federation, has to be expression of 2 identities with some rights of the sides of the 2 groups. You understand? I think one of the faiblesse, the fact that in the Palestinian during the years, it was difficult to a lot of Palestinians recognize that Zionism, the colonization, Zionist colonization, build an Israeli identity, Israeli people, an Israeli nation. Now, this is the reason that I am for a federation between 2 nations, and I believe that it's the only way to live in the Middle East for Jews. And Hannah Arendt were right, and Martin Buber were right when they wrote it 50 years ago. No, much more, 75 years ago. Not a democratic state, because, you know, in the Palestinian tradition, they spoke a lot of one democratic state because they didn't want to recognize the specificity of the Israeli people. You understand me?
No.
And I think a lot of them, it was difficult to, by the way, it's very interesting that a few leaders of Palestinians understood it very well, like Naif Hawatmeh, like Mahmoud Darwish during the Oslo. He understood it very well. There is an Israeli identity that you have to recognize it. You understand?
No,
like
I know Mahmoud Darwish, and I met him.
Can't you have an identity with the same state? Can't you have an Israeli identity and a Palestinian identity, but one government?
I astonished that you ask it, because you stress so much the representation. You are right by stressing that the 2 identities need, in this common state, 2 expressions that explain culture, national feelings. You understand? It's very important. Like in Belgium, you cannot make from Belgium one democratic state. You cannot make in Canada one democratic state without the specificity of representation of the 2 groups.
Look,
the same thing is
in the United States, we have African Americans. They have their own culture, their own identity. You have Hispanic with their own culture and their own identity. You have many Italians, you have Jews, you have They have their own identity and their own culture, but they live in one democratic state.
But you see, as a
No,
historian,
I agree
I'm
with
very
you.
careful. Sorry,
Yeah.
one moment. As a historian, I'm very careful. I ask myself why in Britain, the English has to recognize the Scottish specificity and to give expression to this specificity. In the United States, you are right. But in Belgium, you are not. The moment that you want to make the Belgium one democratic state, ignoring the specificity of the Wallon and the I'm tired of it, but sorry. Then anyway, Flamand. If you are ignoring, it can finish badly. The same thing, for example, in Spain. If you're ignoring the specificity of the Catalan, and say no, like in Franco, we are all us are Spanish, you give a opportunity of conflict, you don't need it. This is the reason, for example, that in my imagination, it's Britain, it's Spain, it's Canada, it's not United States. Even you are right. By the way, if you want, I will accept also United States. But the difference between the black culture and the white culture in United States is not the same like in Belgium with two languages. It's not like in Spain or in Belgium. You understand it's differently.
Yes.
Then, to be honest with you, I am very pessimistic, not only because the new synthesis between religion and nationalism. I am also very skeptic because, you know, the Israeli nationalism is based about the ethnos, you know, the concept of an ethnic. The binational state in East Europe that were based on ethnic definitions, you know, ethnic definitions, broke down. Only in the Western world, where the basic of citizenship, the basic of nationality is not ethnic, it's cultural, linguistic, we arrived to build relatively good federation. Even in Ireland, North Ireland, that I remember 20 years ago, I didn't believe, 25 years ago, I didn't believe the Catholic can live with the Protestant after this bloodshed that was much worse than here in Palestine.
Right.
Then
let's go to Shlomo.
Just 1 second, Joseph. I wanna make a comment. I agree with you, Professor Sand. The ultimate goal will be one democratic state, but what you just said, it is the practical one. You're right. We have to start with recognizing
each other,
who identify each other,
exactly.
And actually implemented by giving citizenship to all Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. And you're right. I mean, it might take many years, but the ultimate goal will be the democratic state.
Agree with you.
That's what.
Let's go to Shlomo Or, then Sergio, then John Mitchell, then Jeffrey. Is it okay? You have time, Professor Sand?
The problem is that I'm afraid that the battery of my computer will finish before. Then I will try to make the best. Okay.
Can you hook it up to the electricity? Can you?
It's upstairs. You know, it's upstairs. It's complicated. I have to run there.
I see.
Then,
okay. So let's make the questions short and the answers short. Shlomo, Sergio, John, Jeffrey, and Fahid.
Short question. If you were the president of the United States and the president of the United States had any power, which is not the case, I think, what would you tell Israel to do? If you could command Israel, okay, you now do this ABC, what would it be?
Simple. Go out from all the occupied territories. If you cannot do it after this colonization, build a federation with the equal right, not only for Israelis, but not only for Arab Israelis, that they have not equal right, with Palestinians. If I was the president of United States, it's the first thing You know, stop. There is not alternative. Before, somebody were so angry at me when I used the word apartheid. But you see, people with citizenship are living half kilometers with people with any right, in the last are going to walk every day in the colonies without any right, not political, not geographical, not social. It's very important, social rights. You know, and he's saying, no, it's not apartheid. No, it's a Jewish state, Sorry. I am from Jewish origin. I'm Israeli from Jewish origin, and I cannot accept this kind of moral. I cannot accept.
Okay, Sergio, and then John, and then Jeffrey, and then Fahid.
If it's finished, the computer, it's not because I am against the confederation. Yeah. Okay? the issue.
Okay, Sergio, you need to unmute. Sergio, you need to unmute. We don't hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call here. I was listening to Mr. Bennett, and you know, these kinds of strong opinions that he has. I'm wondering, you know, based on what he said, for example, that the 3 no's of Khartoum, you know, most Israelis believe that on the 3 no's of Khartoum, Israel offered East Jerusalem and the West Bank to return them, right? As part, but that never happened. And I'm wondering, you know, the fact that, you know, the West Bank and East Jerusalem was not part of this offering of peace, but Israelis not knowing that, you know, they believe that, you know, they offered the return of the lands, but obviously it was not a non-starter for Palestinians if you don't get East Jerusalem and the West. But this is a general understanding of, you know, I don't like the word Zionist, but you know, for practical purposes, this is the reality that you know, there is an enormous sense of misunderstanding. How can you? I mean, can you get to a point?
I'm sorry, but it will stop in a few minutes. Then.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I'm thinking, how can you get to a point of understanding when there is such an enormous amount of misinformation for the last 70 years about the story of Israel-Palestine?
Yeah, you know, basically, I think that the Arabs and the Palestinians made a lot of faults in the past, but basically, it's very important for me. All my life, I'm here. I brought here in 48, 2 years old. As a refugee. I arrived from Europe. One thing I know, that we came to a place that other people were living, you see, and we pushed them and we pushed them. It started for more than 100 years. We have to read Jabotinsky to understand that we are colonialists like other colonialists, like the whites in the United States, like the whites in Australia. You understand? I know it basically, and this is the reason that I don't consider a lot of thoughts the Arabs say tactically or strategically. But one thing, the Palestinians have more rights and are more right than us today. Sorry. And I try to change Israel, you see, not because they are perfect, the Palestinians or the Arabs. I have not illusions in my age about people. You understand? I had a lot of, and I have a lot of Palestinian friends. In part of them, I like less, you see, it's normal, you see. But one thing is important. I grew up in Jaffa. I grew up with Arabs, and I know this country was once upon a time an Arab country. Thank you very much.
No. Can you take, all right, are you leaving?
It will be cut in a few minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry about the reaction, but I am very sensitive. When he said that I am anti-Semitic, I don't think that I can continue a dialogue with somebody that blames me with anti-Semitism. You understand? By the way, I think that Israel creates today more and more anti-Semitism in the world. And this is the reason that I'm very sensitive to it. Sorry that I cannot continue the dialogue with this guy.
You're absolutely right.
You're right.
Okay, may I ask my question, Joseph?
Yeah.
Yeah, just before I do ask my question, Joseph, you as chairman, I think you should consider when someone is completely out of order, as we've witnessed today, you should apply the mute in order to tell these stupid comments and obscene comments. Okay, my question, Shlomo. Shlomo or
I think he's gone, by the way. I don't think he's there.
No, no, I'm here. Look, quickly,
okay.
sorry. Quick.
Yeah. I was going to say that Shlomo answered or asked part of my question I was going to ask. But, you know, in the short term, if there's going to be two states before there's a confederation, then the political pressure and economic pressure from the United States would create those two states. So that's not going to happen in the short term as much as we would like. But we know that the Israeli electorate is at present time quite right-wing, considering the political outlook of the Knesset. So let me ask you, Shlomo, is education in Israel moving slightly more to the left amongst young people, given the fact that in America, the American Jewish Electoral Institute ran a survey last year, and they found that 25% of all American Jews consider Israel to be an apartheid state, and that figure increases to 38% amongst American Jews aged 40 and under. So I'm looking at your shaking of the head, Shlomo. I take it amongst young people and in education, it's not going to happen.
Then the question, what is your question? I
Sorry,
don't understand.
Education, in order to change the...
No, it's become worse in Israel, the education. More and more worse. I mean, when I was a pupil, it was relatively better than today. Because, as I say, the influence, the presence of radical religious nationalism is strong even in the schools. In one of the fights of the movements today, the liberal movements that are not internationalist enough for me, but one of the reasons that they are fighting is because the influence growing more and more of a kind of blindness of the Jewish identity. You know, it's unbelievable, the school today, and there is fights. There is a lot of my students that become, professors in the high school. They react. They try to resist to this phenomenon of the education today of Israel. They try to become less Israeli and more Jews. You understand? But this is the new government that try to fight.
Okay, I think we lost him. John?
Yeah. That was certainly, he replied saying that education is certainly going downhill in Israel in order to change the political outlook. Yeah, carry on.
All right, let's go to Jeffrey, see if you have, the professor is gone, but do you have any general questions or comments, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I have a comment. It's based on my decades of political activism, both in the U.S. on especially working class issues, and in living and working in the occupied Palestinian territories, Gaza and the West Bank. And for me, in terms of everything that's been talked about, I really believe we need to focus on process. I mean, I just don't feel like I've heard at least enough on process and about building. And what I would say is we need to think about, well, this is my suggestion. We need to think about building a movement among Israeli Jews and Palestinians. That's the internal struggle. And supporting international states, especially the United States, because it gives so much support to Israel. That's the external aspect. So we've got an internal struggle and an external struggle, all fighting For what? Well, I think we need to be fighting to build a political movement on the basis of principles, and the principles that, in very brief terms, would be equality for all in all aspects of social life, with humane values. You know, like that's real general, but for me, it's really clear. We want humane values. I don't like the word tolerance, because you could tolerate Nazism. No, it's got to be humane values, respect. I always use respect rather than tolerance. And I'm reading here so I can go quickly. Let the movement for equality.
John, aren't you really describing word by word the common government that we are proposing?
Yeah, but see, you're proposing it. I want to focus on how in the hell are we going to get there? And you got to get there by convincing. I really believe you've got to convince Israeli Jews.
How do you convince?
Well, you fight. You have the knowledge of history behind you. And
but how do you convince if not by doing what we are doing?
Educating.
That's exactly it.
But
Okay,
you're
educating. Educating is part of the process.
Isn't that what we are doing? You're speaking.
You've already set up something. I'm talking about how do we get to, and personally, I don't support or not support what you're doing. I'm more concerned.
Why not? Why are you not supportive of what we're doing?
Because I'm concerned that we build. Okay, my focus, based on my experiences, you've got to build a movement of people. You've got to get
but why are you not supporting? Why are you not supporting what we are doing? What's wrong with what we are doing?
Because I would like to see. Okay, two things. One, I would like to see something different. But one of my principles is I want to. Let me finish.
What is it different that you want to see?
Let me do. No, it's unimportant. Okay, for me, it's not that. I told you, I want to see humane values. I want to see equality. Joseph, let me finish. What I'm saying is, I would like to see, as part of the process, that the people those Jews and those Palestinians who are actually doing the activism, the ones who are fighting and the ones who internationally are supporting them, but in this case, not the international ones so much. The international supporting what the people in the Jews and the Palestinians want. I want them to decide what they want. Do they want what you suggest, or do they want something else? Let them. They're the ones struggling, and they're the ones struggling for humanity. They're the ones struggling for equality. Okay, all across the board. Let them decide. They're the ones that have to live in whatever they decide. I'm not. I'm living over here in the safety of Los Angeles. I'm not going to make a decision for them. If I'm going to fight a struggle here, I'm going to be part of the decision.
Are you saying the people, the Israeli and the Palestinian people that are physically there? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm talking about. They should, the ones that are actually active in trying to change
things. Let me ask you this. If they do not do it, which they haven't been doing it for 75 years, are you saying that people who live outside should just wait until the people in Israel, Palestine, until they decide to do it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying this.
All right, so why are you
we
not,
can struggle.
I'm going back to my question. Why are you not supportive of what we are doing?
Because I would like to see. I would like to see one democratic state of all the people who live in that state, living in equality, respecting one another, with humane values. That's what I want to see.
So what is the problem you have with our formula?
Because it's imposing something right now that I don't see as something as my end goal.
What is the problem that you have with our formula? You really want to dismantle the Israeli government? That's really what you want, correct?
Yeah, I want the people of Israel.
How do you dismantle the Israeli government? How?
I want through education, through struggle, and we're not talking about something overnight.
You think
to make those changes.
You think that you can get education to dismantle the Israeli government by education? Is that
education can lead to struggle? It can lead to movement. How else do you change people's minds? Or do you want to see? I don't
Well,
want to impose.
Okay, so you basically being very vague. You're saying you don't want to say, I know that because that you want to dismantle the Israeli government and you want to have one state under one government. That's really what you want, okay?
Yes.
And the question is then, how do you get to that? How do you get to this? Is it possible to dismantle the Israeli government?
I say yes, and I say that it takes struggle of the very people who are now being oppressed and who are oppressed.
What is the struggle going to look like? That is it a physical struggle? What? Look, basically, you're going to say to me the same as South Africa. That's at the end. We're going to get to that. But Israel-Palestine is not the same as South Africa because Israel is a Jewish state. It has been accepted by the world as a Jewish state. Israel has nuclear power. South Africa did not. Israel has enemies. Israel is not going to go in the direction of South Africa because of the different situation, different political, different philosophical belief. You're laughing, but the reality is that it hasn't happened for 75 years.
Joseph, can I interfere here? I don't know if it's my time or I can do it. I'm sorry, I'm late. Is there any way I can just make a comment about this?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just came late because I have a family issue here. And the gentleman who was speaking, I disagree with you as a Palestinian. I really think this is, for the past 76 years, I could describe it as Mr. Gedon Levy said that if you have a kid who is addicted to drugs and you keep giving him drugs, he will never get out from drugs. This is what's happening to the state of Israel. That is getting the support.
How is that a response to what John and I are saying?
Say it again.
How is that a response? John is basically.
The response is he's saying that you need to let the people do it. It's no way the people will do it because there is the Israelis is above. They have all they want, and you need to remember there is a lot of. It's not a Palestinian Israelis issue. There is a bigger power is involved. Iran is involved. Everybody's involved in that region. Everybody is doing their interest in the region. So when you support Hamas against Fatah, when you are supporting the right wing against the left wings, this is what's happening. So the best way as a Palestinian, I'm 52 years old, and I've been listening to so many offers in my life. I believe this is the only way you can bring people together through what Mr. Joseph is offering, because this is the only solution. One state solution is impossible. Two state solution is impossible. A common government is the only possible thing in this time. And by the way we do this, we need to bring it to social media and to take it to places where to schools, to people who's educated. Like yesterday, we spoke with high-rank Palestinian people. They start listening to you. This is the only way to do it. Just letting the people do it on their own, this is impossible, my friend. That's what I want to say.
All right, thank you. John, do you want to respond, or shall I go to Jeffrey?
Oh, who you talking to?
Move on to Pete.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went to Jeffrey. Okay, let's go to Fahed. Fahed, you, and then Pete. Pete, can you ask your question?
Can I? Okay. So my question is, what is you're saying it's accepted as the Jewish state, and I think that is not correct. I've just been on tour with Rabbi Weiss from the Neturei Karta.
I'm not understanding you.
Okay. So his definition of what is a Jew, because the people in Israel that you're referring to as Jews, they don't follow the Torah. They're mostly atheists. They're not descended from the ancient Hebrews. They're following a Christian evangelical interpretation of the Bible. So these are European colonialists, so who are using religion in order to take land. I don't think they have any heritable rights to the land. So my view is this, my question is this: since Israel will never give up 1 inch of land, would it not be more realistic to declare the end of Zionism and begin a new state? Because that's more or less what happened in South Africa.
That would be the ideal situation, but the ideal situation is not realistic.
Okay, I think it would only be possible in the same way as it happened in South Africa, which is when the American government decided
South Africa was not a Zionist country.
Wait a minute. When the American government decided to withdraw its support, when the white South Africans found the Krugerrand in their pockets was beginning to be worth nothing, at that point we saw change. So it's only when the money in your
South
pocket
Africa was not a Zionist country.
I know it was an apartheid country, so
It was an apartheid, but not a Zionist country.
I'm trying to tell you that if you take away the support that Israel has enjoyed for the past 75 years, then you will see change.
Yeah, but I agree with you. The question is, how do you remove the Zionist element from Israel?
I think the point is that
South Africa, because South Africa was not Zionist.
No, but they had the same idea about racial supremacy that was.
No, they did not.
They said given to them by God. They were saying, you know, this is
they
our
did
land.
not. South Africa was not racist based on religion.
But it was the religion's a side issue. Religion is only.
It's not a side issue in a Jewish state. It's not a side issue.
But it's used in order to take land. Religion is
fine.
Used
I agree with you. It is, but
so it's the same way that it happened when America took when the whites took the USA. They were saying God gave us this land. You know, right from the first Pilgrim Fathers, God gave us this land.
Okay, let me tell you this. In my opinion, comparing Israel to South Africa is not correct comparison, and I'll tell you why. Because Israel was created because of the Holocaust. Okay, the people in
no. It was created by Balfour. It was the Holocaust.
Read the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, but Balfour created it. Balfour gave the land to the Zionist Federation.
Yeah,
That's
but the Declaration of Independence said that Israel was created because of the.
Yeah, but that's what they said. But the truth was, it was created.
That's what Israelis believe.
No,
I know
but
what Israelis
Joseph,
the truth is immaterial. What they believe is that it was created as a safety, as a safe place for the Jews. Okay.
Joseph, but we cannot start just in the independent state. It was given to the Balfour Declaration in 1917, and Balfour gave it to the Jewish people. That's we have to put the, you know.
Yeah,
only before the Holocaust.
Yes, but if you ask Israelis why they want a Jewish state, they will tell you that because of the Holocaust.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I know that people say that. I've got Zionist friends who say, "Oh, Israel's the only safe place for us if anything goes bad."
Yeah. So that's different. That's different than that's different than South Africa. The other thing that is different than South Africa is that Israel has nuclear weapons and Israel has enemies. Okay. And the United States and Great Britain and France do not want Israel to be in another war because it is capable of using its nuclear weapon. So the reason that they support Israel as a Jewish state is because they have no choice. They understand that Israel is a tiger, that they have it by the tail. It's not the same as South Africa. South Africa did not have enemies. South Africa did not have nuclear weapons. So you cannot treat, in terms of analysis, South Africa with Israel. All right. Let's go to anybody else wants to say anything, and then I'll go to concluding this remarks.
I want to share
I'm sorry.
something.
Good.
Can I say something?
Sure,
No?
Samir.
All right. I don't think that the IPC can work. Why? For one simple reason, because you have in your constitution that you're giving the vote power, the power of vote, of veto, the power of veto to Israel. And I mean, you said also to the Palestinian, but anyway, giving the power to Israel, that will never happen. And that, because of that, Sam Bahour, few weeks ago, said that from his experience, he said it will never work. And I agree with him. And
He
you
has no
asked him,
experience. He has no
Yes.
experience in that.
well,
That's
anyway,
a made up statement.
yeah, well,
Experience.
no,
He has
well, I mean,
he has no ability to say if it works or not.
well, he can, of course he can.
No,
because,
he can
because
say, look, I can say that I can fly.
Yeah.
I can
no,
fly.
no, no,
Minutes.
no, no, wait a second.
It's finishing
Wait a
in 2
second. You asked him for an example, and he did not give you an example, but I give you an example right now.
Example for what?
The example is UN resolution 242 and 338 issued in 1967. It never been implemented. Why? Because of the American veto power for the last 56 years. And that's enough. And you are proposing right now to give the veto power to Israel. Well, it would never happen. They will veto it forever. So you are just repeating the same thing what Israel has been doing, and you just wanna do it for another 56 years.
I'm sorry, Samir, you're giving an example of the United States vetoing.
Not United States, United Nations, I said, United Nations. 242 and 338 issued in 1967.
Okay, but we are showing you. Okay, we are showing you legislation upon legislation upon legislation. We're showing you how they pass, and now you're not refuting any of them.
I refute one thing. I said the veto power. You have to change it. You cannot give Israel the veto power. Period. Period.
I agree.
Joseph,
Okay, if it's not a veto power to Israel only, it's to whoever.
Well, it doesn't matter. Israel is the superpower.
Joseph,
The
Joseph,
occupation
I
power.
think,
So I mean,
Joseph,
Palestinian, I mean, whether they say yes or no, it doesn't matter, because I mean, Israel is occupying the land. So they impose everything on, so they will veto that forever. They veto IPC.
If you do not give Israel a veto power and the Palestinian, you lose legitimacy.
Well, then forget it. Forget the whole IPC.
Let me finish. You lose legitimacy. The Israeli people will never support a common government that is above the Israeli government. They will never.
Well, fine. Forget it. Forget
the whole. Then what is your
IPC.
solution? Then what is your solution?
The solution is one democratic state.
How do you get there? How do you
get there? Well, right now you have the democracy movement, pro-democracy movement. Just fight for the.
Okay. How do you? What is the pro-democracy? The pro-democracy movement in Israel has nothing to do with the Palestinians.
It's happening right now. It's
No,
happening right now.
The pro-democracy movement in Israel is internal to the Israelis to defeat Ben-Gvir.
Well, fine.
But they are not pro-democracy with the Palestinians.
Well, that's the problem here. I call for the Palestinian Israelis to join that movement right now.
But they are not.
Democracy for all.
They want democracy
for all.
They want democracy for Jews.
Well,
can I add one
have to
item
change
that
it.
nobody
I mean-
pays attention to? I'd like to add one item nobody pay attention to.
I mean, that's what I asked
You
you
have
to
a
go.
state-
You go
you have a
there
state-
right now and join the
Samir,
movement.
can I say something?
You
It's
need to
on an
direct the
item that
movement.
nobody is paying attention to. Israel is a country with a GNP per person of $53,000. There will never be any confederation with the Palestinians until the Palestinians can come to a very high standard of living. Otherwise, they will be the almost the servants of an Israeli country. The Palestinians must have independence and they must be strong. Otherwise, you have a giant economically with a very poor country next to it.
Correct.
This
Okay,
poor
let me-
country is going
let
to
me-
be the US supporter and the woodcutters, as the expression goes. You
All right,
must,
let me make
the
comment.
IPC completely disregarded this economical problem.
Okay, let me make remarks. I think we all agree that a common democratic government can bring peace. We all agree with it. Common democratic. The question is how to, or it's how to dismantle or whether or not to dismantle the existing government. In my opinion, it is not possible to dismantle the existing governments, but it is possible.
Why?
Well, because the Israeli government is strong economically, it is strong politically, it is strong militarily, and it has the strong support of the Israeli people.
Well, what about the power of the people? I mean,
Samir,
People that
Francis,
if you force them to dismantle, if that's the only choice you give them, they're not going to dismantle it. They're not going to dismantle.
who's not gonna dismantle?
The Israeli people.
Well, the Israeli people are a combination of Israeli, Palestinian, and Israelis. There are
Right.
4 million of them. 4 million.
The people that support the Israeli government, the Israeli people, the Israeli military.
They are just 3 million. We're talking about 4 million against 3 million.
No, that's not true.
It's not. What do you mean not true? It is true.
Not true. You have 6 million Jews, and you have
There are no,
and you have 2
no,
Israeli
no,
Palestinians.
no. You have total 7 million living in Israel proper, what they call Israel proper.
9 million.
7 million.
9
2.5 million pro-democracy movement, and 1.5 million Palestinian Israelis. If you add that to 4 million against the pro-apartheid Netanyahu camp, which is 3 million, you have 4 million against 3 million. If they go in the street, the 4 million, these will dismantle the current Israeli apartheid regime right now, and it's happening, and that's what it needs to go on, and you should know, and you should go there and join it and fight for it.
Samir, I think that you're misreading what's happening in Israel now.
What do you mean? I'm not misreading.
Let me finish.
No.
You don't want to let me finish?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The Zionist Israeli Jewish community supports an Israeli government.
Well, fine.
They have been supporting that for 75 years.
Well, fine. Now time is dismantled.
They do not want to dismantle the Israeli government, those that are on the right and those that are on the left. The pro-democracy movement that is going on in Israel is internal to the Israeli people that are Jewish people mostly. It does not include the Palestinian.
Well, that's fine. I know that.
That's why you see both of them.
They should join together.
Okay, they are against this. It's not even in their radar to dismantle.
You need to change them, I mean. You need to redirect them.
I understand that they need to change. They're not going to change.
Well, then that will keep the fight forever.
What I am saying is it is possible to create a common government between the Palestinian and the Israeli people.
No.
Okay.
The Israelis right now.
Okay, look, that's
well, I mean, right now they are answering you. They don't want to state. They don't want to come in a state. They want one state. And that means right now is one apartheid state, and they need to change it to one democratic state. Democracy for all.
I agree with you, but they're not. They're not going.
Well, it's going to happen. It's happening right now. They have to keep going in demonstration and join together. Sure. It might take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but it will happen just like it happened in South Africa.
So your vision is to dismantle the Israeli government?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't think that's possible. That's all.
Well, it is possible. I think it is possible.
All right.
Joseph, if you allowed me, Joseph, I don't know if you can hear me. I some may agree with Mr. Samir, and as you see yesterday when we brought the few people and to speak with you, and one of them is two of them is generals who work with the Palestinian Authority, and a few of them is connected people. They told you this is for you just to allow the Israeli to say to keep the IDF and to have the veto power. This is itself serving the.
You're right.
Serving Israel. If you want to come, I tell you something. First of all, I understand how everybody say, yes, the Palestinians are suffering, and I agree with that 100%. But remember, the Israelis are suffering, and they don't live in peace, and there is always a new actions happening, and they cannot live in peace. Number two, you have to understand something, and there is a lot of discrimination within the Israelis public. You are talking about Palestinian Arabs, you are talking about Mizrahi Jews. They are facing a lot of discrimination, and that's the proof of that. From the creation of the Zionist state until today, every prime minister control the state was from European background. So if you want the people to be with you, if you want to bring the Palestinians and the Israelis, and you have enough vote, this voting can secure a new beginning. If I am bringing you a 2 million Palestinians to vote, and you could bring 2 million Israelis to vote, this is the legitimacy for the new government, and that's why we could dismantle every other government because of the election that we bring in together in this one.
That's true.
If you're telling me if we can bring this together in the streets, and we can bring enough Israelis and enough Palestinians to agree with it, that itself is the democracy. That itself is the legitimacy. That itself is the way to do it. We cannot give some higher power than other, because by the end of the day, when we spoke after you left, everybody says, Saeed, it's a good one. But if we're gonna bring votes to this, where is my vote goes? Just to let Israel veto it anytime it wants? If you want to bring
let me ask you a question. Do you believe, you and Samir, that it is first necessary to dismantle the Israeli government before we?
No, don't dismantle it. Go ahead with your plan.
No, okay, so you say it's not necessary.
Okay, let me give you my view. You asked me the question.
This is a yes or no answer. I don't want a long speech.
No, I will give you an answer. If you don't dismantle it, vote, let the vote decide. When we have enough legitimacy to
Vote
bring
where?
people to vote,
Vote where?
in between, like you are bringing the Palestinian to vote in your common government. If you have enough vote, you have enough legitimacy.
I'm asking you a very simple question. Do you believe that before we create a common government, we need to dismantle the Israeli, the Palestinian, or the Hamas government? Yes or no? Just yes
No.
or no.
I would
All right.
say no, and I have to explain
Okay.
why not.
All right, okay. Samir, answer me, yes or no? Do you believe that before we create a common government, we have to dismantle the Israeli, the Palestinian, or the Hamas government first?
Yes.
Okay.
And you do it by the movement right now,
Okay.
the pro-democracy movement.
Okay, fine. I'm not asking how to do it.
Yes, you need to
Yes, let me ask
dismantle
you
this
this.
regime.
Okay,
Yes.
Just answer my question.
Yes.
By when do you think the Israeli, the Palestinian, and the Hamas government will be dismantled? By when?
I could answer this when we bring enough
No,
people.
you don't need to answer. You already said.
I
You're
answered
asking
it.
Samir.
After you do it in what we
Give
call
me a
proper
date.
Israel,
Give me a
then you
date.
turn to the Hamas.
After that could be in a million years. Give me.
Not
When
a
do you
million years.
anticipate this to
Right
happen?
now, we are talking about. We're talking about now.
I'm asking you a very specific question.
Yes.
By when do you anticipate that the Israeli and the Palestinian governments will be dismantled? By when? Give me a date. What is your...
Right now, if the demonstrations continue, the pro-democracy movement, and it will be
You're not
joined by
answering
the
my question.
Palestinians,
You're
it will
answering a
happen.
different question.
It's not a different question. Yes.
Look, you're not answering the question. By when do you believe?
Well, I mean, it depends on the people in Israel, Palestine. I mean, they are demonstrating
Look,
right
you're
now.
not answering my question. Okay.
You said by when? It might take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But it has to be fair.
Right. Okay, let's say
before Hamas
okay.
and
So
before
you
the
believe
West Bank.
you believe that it may take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Can I just say one more, Joseph? As soon as we have enough votes to discredit all these governments, we dismantle these governments.
Yes.
But you're speaking two different things.
Why?
Samir is saying we first need to dismantle the existing governments. You say, no, let's create the
That's what I'm saying. Keep everybody the same because you
okay, so you have different understanding.
No, not different understanding. Joseph, if you wanna, I mean, dismantle, what does dismantle mean? I mean, dismantle, I mean,
they don't have the power to use the military.
No. Dismantling, what I mean, dismantling by voting. I mean, by going into the street. Later, you're gonna vote the government, bring it down.
Okay. But by voting within the Israeli system?
Yes.
Okay. So you think that the Israeli electoral system,
yes,
the Israeli Knesset,
yes,
be elected, and they will vote to dismantle their own government.
Yes, you make the change within Israel.
Right.
I mean,
so I'm not going to argue with you whether it's going to happen or not, but you told me that.
Well, I mean, you have to work on it. I mean, that's what I suggested to you. You go there and join the movement.
Okay, so that's what you suggested to me, and I am telling you that it is an impossibility.
No.
No.
But if that's impossible, then nothing possible. If that's impossible,
that's not true.
It is true.
Because I'll tell you why it's an impossibility. Because you are telling the Jewish people who created a Jewish state because they believe that the whole world is against them. You tell them, let's dismantle your own government. The government.
I'm not telling them, I mean, they are doing it.
You're telling me to go and do in Israel.
No.
They had thousands and thousands of people being killed to preserve the Jewish state. And you're telling me to go ahead and tell them that everything they expended.
You don't need to tell them. You go and join them, not tell them.
Join who? There's nobody that does that.
Yes.
Single person.
The pro-democracy movement.
There isn't a single person in Israel, in my opinion, that advocates for the dismantling of the Israeli.
Well, that's not true. It's not true.
Give me a name of one person.
What do you mean one person?
Even Ofer Kasif does not believe that. Even the Arab Knesset do not believe that.
Well,
they all swear allegiance to the government of Israel.
They have the right to vote.
They all have, yes, but they
have the right to do in the street.
They all, yes, but you don't see those. This is all in your imagination.
What do you mean you don't see? You see, of course.
No, you do not. The only democracy movement that you see is between Israelis themselves.
What do you mean between Israelis themselves? They are living among Palestinians.
Between those that are in the government and those who want to be in the government. It's nothing to do with Palestinians.
Well,
they want to include the Palestinians.
Why they are demonstrating in the street? They want change.
I'll tell you why they're demonstrating in the streets. Because the Netanyahu government is passing legislation to make Israel more of a Jewish state, more Orthodox, and to have a Supreme Court that would protect him from his criminal trial. They want to bring it back to how it was before. The way it was before is a Zionist government that was anti-Palestinians. You misunderstand what's going on?
No, I'm not misunderstanding. I'm not misunderstanding. I just said it and I say it over. Israel used to be democracy for Jews. And now it's a dictatorship. And now there is a pro-democracy movement. They want to bring it back to democracy. But what I'm saying, it should be a new direction. And you and others now in Israel, they will join together, Palestinian Israelis and Israeli Jews together and vote and work for democracy for all.
I think the best way.
Democracy for all.
Look, why do you think America has one federal government and 50 states? Why?
Because they vote for democracy for all.
Yes, but they kept 50 states with 50 governments, with 50 constitutions, with 50 parliament.
Yes.
Okay, why?
Why? Because they all.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why.
They
This
all
is a
agree on
reality
equality.
you cannot ignore.
Well,
they
agreed on equality and democracy for all. That's why.
Right, but they kept the existing governments.
Well, fine. You keep the existing government. You change it by voting.
The existing governments. They kept the existing because they understood that you cannot dismantle those governments.
Yes, you can by vote. Of course you can.
Look, you can say yes, you can. You can say that about everything, but you have to be realistic.
Well, how do we, change our government here in the United States? How do we change it?
In the United States, you have one federal government and 50 different state governments.
Well, fine. How do we do it?
Anybody had called for the dismantling of the government of Texas.
Well, dismantling meaning by vote, not by force, by vote.
Okay, by vote to do what? To dismantle the government of Israel?
What do dismantle?
I'm showing you.
You vote and you bring it down.
To vote for what? What would be in the vote?
Samir, if you allow me 1 second.
You vote for democracy for all. That's what you should.
Okay. Yes, but then the question is,
you vote for the right leader.
And then you have the question of dismantling. These are two different questions.
But Joseph, Samir شوي حبيبي. If you, Joseph, if you bring enough people to vote in your plan, and you bring millions to vote in your plan from Palestinian and Israelis, that will be enough for you to walk in and create and make any change anywhere you want. Because
Okay,
that's the vote.
That's what I am proposing. That's what I'm proposing.
Exactly, but
Understand
we're
what
not gonna
Samir
give.
wants. Samir wants to dismantle first. That's
It's not this man. No, no,
unrealistic.
no.
Samir,
No,
I
you
asked you, you said
misunderstood them.
yes.
No. Dismantling
Okay, guys.
I mean by vote. By vote, I said.
by vote, bring
Change.
in votes and change the facts in the ground, and these
Yes.
new votes with millions of Palestinians and Israelis around the world can vote together. That
Yes.
will discredit
I
both
can tell you
governments,
that
the Israeli
even if we create a common government, okay, you're not going to be able to vote to dismantle the Israeli government or the Palestinian government or the Hamas government. Okay.
But imagine if you have enough Palestinians to vote in your plan and you have world recognition, my friend, that will be a change.
Yeah, you can reduce their legitimacy.
Exactly.
You cannot,
this is what Samir means. This is what Samir means.
Fine. But you cannot vote them out, and just like you
Yes.
vote. Okay.
Vote them out. Yes, vote them out. And you have right now 4 million in the camp against the occupation, against this government. The pro-democracy makes 4 million people.
All right,
it's not against the occupation. It's not against the occupation. You wish.
Well, I mean, not, but you need to change it. I mean.
Okay, I believe that it is possible to create a common government. I believe that one day of war between Israel and Gaza is $100 million. With $100 million, we can create a common government. $100 million is not a lot of money. You can buy a Van Gogh picture with $100 million. You can buy an Airbus. You can buy. And now I understand they have a house in Beverly Hills or somewhere that's 200 million, but you can buy a mansion in Beverly Hills for $100 million. So what I am proposing is to create a common government, regardless of the Israeli or the Palestinian government. And I am hoping that you come into the next simulation that we have on June 25th with Yoram Perry. All right, thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Bye-bye.